y'all all good down there too? Are y'all good? Okay. Oh, red light. Okay, there we go. All right. Everybody set? The February 24th, 2026 school board special meeting and workshop is called to order. Ms. Tresky, please call the roll.
Mr. Cherry.
Here.
Mr. Link. Dr. Jamison.
Yes.
Ms. Quintana.
Here.
Ms. Trigg.
Here.
Mrs. Watkins.
Here.
Mrs. Apel.
Here. Thank you to all of those that are joining the meeting in person and with us via the RCPS YouTube channel. We move to the approval of the agenda this evening. Is there a motion and a second to amend the agenda to add an additional closed meeting topic pursuant to State Code 2.2-3711A3 of the Code of Virginia and to reorder the superintendent's reports by moving the budget topic from item C to item D?
Move.
Second. Moved by Mr. Cherry, seconded by Ms. Watkins. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. And the motion carries. The agenda is approved. February is School Board Appreciation Month. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. White to share a few comments in honor of this month's observance.
Good evening, everyone. Roanoke City Public Schools is proud to join divisions across Virginia in celebrating School Board Appreciation Month this February. I'm grateful for the dedication and the leadership of our school board, as well as the more than 800 school board members across the Commonwealth of Virginia who work tirelessly to support public education. The theme, From Strong Roots Come Endless Possibilities, highlights the vital role school board members play in planting the seeds for student success, ensuring every student has the resources needed to dream, excel, and meet their full potential, benefiting our city and its citizens. And I appreciate your service to our school board members. You know, I love and appreciate you. I know that you have a heart for children, and I know that you care about each and every one of our students. And so I just want to personally say thank you for all that you do. And it is my honor to now read the resolution, this year's resolution. So Virginia School Board Appreciation Month, February 2026. Whereas the education of Virginia's school-age children is the foundation upon which the economic, social, and intellectual capital of our state is built, and whereas the locally elected and appointed school boards play an important and vital government role, and decisions made by local school boards directly influence instruction in Virginia's public schools, and whereas these decisions affect the present and future lives of children and also set direction to prepare all students to be competitive in a local, state, and national and global 21st century knowledge economy. And whereas local school board members work with parents, businesses, education professionals, and other community members to create the education vision that we want for students. And whereas this year's theme, From Strong Roots Come Endless Possibilities, highlights the vital role school board members play in planting the seeds for student success, ensuring that every student has the resources needed to grow, thrive, and reach their full potential. And whereas School Board Appreciation Month provides an opportunity to celebrate Virginia school board members who champion the mission of public education, now be it resolved that Roanoke City Public Schools joins the Virginia School Board Association in recognizing the contributions of the local school board members to the academic success of its public school students and expresses its sincerest recognition to local school board members for their focus on the well-being and achievement of students throughout the Commonwealth. And be it finally resolved that Roanoke City Public Schools declares February 2026 as School Board Appreciation Month and encourages local community members and leaders to appropriately recognize our school division's dedicated school board members. So, Mrs. Apel, Mr. Cherry, Dr. Jamison, Mr. Link, Ms. Quintana, Ms. Trigg, Mrs. Watkins, and our student representatives. Thank you so much for all that you do for our students, our staff, our families, and our schools. And you know that we can't say thank you without a little help from our students and staff. So we created a video as just a small token of our gratitude. So let's roll that beautiful bean footage.
We are appointed people. We are not politicians, but we are in a political position. And so we have to manage that aspect of the job as well as the governance piece to serve our students and our families and our community the best way we possibly can.
I do love that not only seeing the superintendent and her staff get along so well, I love that we do too.
I wanted to ensure that I contributed what I could as an individual to ensure that Roanoke City Public Schools got the support they needed.
Going into the board, initially, it was all about student voice, giving them more of a voice when it comes to our decision making.
Everyone that I've been in those boardrooms with and the superintendents, they've all been about the kids. You know, our first question all the time is, how does this impact our kids?
And our main focus is their education and their safety.
When they walk across the stage, they are prepared to enter society in a productive way where they will feel fulfilled.
Thank you for supporting our community business program. Because of you, we get to learn and grow in our own city.
Thank you. On behalf of the Oasis team, we'd like to thank you for everything you do for Roanoke City Public Schools.
On behalf of the William Women Girls Basketball Team, thank you for your support.
To our school board, we thank you for all you do. Roanoke City Public Schools is so thankful for your service.
From the Fifth Queen of William Women High School.
Hello, school board. This is Mr. Schmidt here with the PH Symphonic Band. Hey, Symphonic Band, raise your hand if you play on a school instrument from PH. That's what your support means, school board. We cannot do band without you. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you to the school board for your continued commitment to helping HR recruit, hire, retain, develop, and support the high-quality professionals you serve every student every day.
Help and support dependable, innovative and secure solutions.
Thank you from the.
To all of our school board members, we're here to say thank you. Thank you for the way that you lead, the way that you govern, the way that you care about all of our students. You lead with heart, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Join me in thanking our school board members.
Thank you. That was so
Sweet.
sweet. Thank you.
That was adorable.
That was amazing. Thank you. Truly, thank you.
So again, we appreciate you. We appreciate all that you do. We see you and we recognize the long hours. We recognize the dedication. And we just want to say thank you for everything. So Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much. And I know we were all very touched and appreciative for the time and effort that went into that. So, and it is a privilege working with these people that are here tonight and the ones that I've had the privilege of working with before and that will come after me. And I know those of you who have worked with others before my time as well, so thank you for that. Moving on to School Board Clerk Appreciation Week. We also, so technically that was last week, but the board would like to recognize Clerk Kim Tresky and Deputy Clerk Dawn Winter Ware during School Board Clerk Appreciation Week for their dedication and hard work. So we shared a token of our appreciation last week with them individually, but I cannot say enough And we cannot, as a board, say enough about Ms. Tresky and Ms. Winter Ware. They are the glue and the WD-40.
Oh, yeah.
And the ones that herd the cats. And there aren't enough superlatives. And we just, as a board, hope you feel valued for the effort that you put into making sure that this board and this division works. So thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Right.
All right.
We'll now continue with the personnel list. Is there a motion and a second to approve the personnel list as presented?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Cherry, seconded by Ms. Quintana. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. And the motion carries. The personnel list is approved. Now, ahead of the superintendent updates, I did just want to take a moment to thank all of the hundreds who tuned into the budget town hall. Hundreds, I believe it was over 700 people who either watched during or after the fact. Also, thank you to the 170 plus who submitted feedback through the link and email leading up to last Friday when that closed. I know the board has really been paying attention to as much feedback as we can get from as many sources as possible. Also, thank you to my fellow school board members for the work that is ongoing that we're putting in during this budget development process, and to the RCPS employees who, especially our chiefs and exec team, which we'll hear from a lot more tonight, who are doing yeoman's work regarding the resources at play for fiscal year 27. This is the most difficult budget cycle I've been a part of during my time on the board. And I just want to express the gratitude for the dedication to preserving the integrity of our mission and prioritizing the classroom as much as possible during this. So, Dr. White, I'll turn it over to you for your updates.
Very good. Good evening again, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the school board and student representatives and members of the public. This evening, we're bringing forward several items for your information and consideration, including approval of our comprehensive support and improvement plans, an update on the capital improvement plan and the capital maintenance program, as well as an update on the 2026-2027 budget. So before we begin, I would like to take a moment to highlight a few items for the board and for the public's information. I would like to congratulate all of our middle and high school students who participated in the citywide science fair 2 weeks ago. The grand award winners will now move on to represent our CPS at the Western Virginia Regional Science Fair next month. So we're so proud of their hard work and dedication. Let's give them a hand. I also want to remind our teachers and staff that applications to work during our summer programming opened last week with a deadline to apply by Monday, March 16th. So we will be continuing our STAR program this summer, which supports our rising 3rd through 8th graders who have a demonstrated academic need through a focus on reading and math. So we will also continue to offer a traditional high school summer school and our community builders program, as well as Staying Safe by Staying Connected. So more details will be shared with invited families and those who are interested in our summer camp opportunities as we get closer to summer. Finally, kindergarten registration for the 26-27 school year opened yesterday. Our schools and the Community Empowerment Center have hosted registration events this week to support parents and guardians with the process, to answer questions and to connect them with resources. Tomorrow, families can continue to stop by the Community Empowerment Center from 9 to 4 for in-person assistance. If you need that assistance with registration, we're here to help. I encourage anyone with a rising kindergartner to visit our website for details to begin the registration process. All right, so to begin, I will ask our Chief Instructional and Administrative Officer, Archie Freeman, to provide an update on the comprehensive support and improvement plans and applications for 2 of our schools for your consideration. So, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Dr. White. Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Cherry, members of the board, student representatives, and Dr. White. On January the 27th at the school board workshop, as we stated on February the 10th, the board did receive an overview of our current student performance data, including an update on our federally identified schools. On February the 10th, you took the opportunity to allow us and Dr. White to provide a signature in regards to our federally identified application to receive funding for our TSI schools. On tonight, we want to submit the same information as needed for our comprehensive support and improvement plan for our comprehensive support and improvement schools under the Virginia Department of Education's new accountability system. The VDOE now requires that we develop and implement, of course, as I stated earlier, the multi-year plans for all schools also identified for CSI. So those plans must be submitted for review and made publicly accessible upon completion. As we're completing alignments of our VDOE requirements, the division will present the finalized CSI multi-year school support plans to the board and post them on the division's website. But as we're moving forward through the application process, we want to go ahead on and secure those funds by asking Dr. White to have that signature provided, because for our CSI schools, it'll be over a 2-year period, and we have the monies up to $150,000 plus that we could possibly use, and we want to secure those funds as soon as possible. So the board is asked tonight to approve the superintendent's signature, on the completed application workbook to secure additional funding for the 2 CSI identified schools, which are Hurt Park and Preston Park Elementary School.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Does the board have any comments or questions at this time?
That funding.
Okay. Is there a motion and a second to approve the signature of the superintendent for the completed applications? So moved.
Second.
For the CSI schools as presented. So moved by Ms. Watkins, seconded by Ms. Trigg.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. And the motion carries. The approval for the superintendent's signature for the 2 CSI applications is approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I also want to thank Dr. Wimbush and Mr. Bowman for working to secure it fast because of the quick turnaround time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Next, I'll ask our Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Chris Perkins, to present the annual report for capital development for fiscal years 2027 through 2036 and discuss the capital improvement plan as well. So, Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Dr. White. Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. I bring to you tonight the Capital Development Initiative. The main part of that is the Capital Improvement Plan and the Capital Maintenance Plan. At your seats, you have the written report. I do want to bring your attention that there is a proposed $650,000 cut to facility maintenance. This will require us, if approved, require us to defer maintenance of several projects within our Cap Develop initiative and reschedule those for future cycles. It will also require us to concentrate on projects that address immediate health, safety, and essential building integrity issues to secure the environment for all of our students. That's an unfortunate situation for us. I will move into an explanation of the capital improvement plan. Keep in mind that our maintenance, capital improvement plan and our capital maintenance plan are actually a testament to preventative maintenance and renovation that we've been able to do at Roanoke City Public Schools. The capital improvement plan provides us with a roadmap on how to do that. At the request of City Council, specifically Bill Bestpitch, about 4.5 to 5 years ago, he requested that we move from a 5-year cycle to a 10-year cycle to allow the city to better plan for the needs of the school district. We did just that, and we turned it around in a very short period of time. We used this 10-year plan to map our way to improvements across the district. Keep in mind, the average age of our facilities is over 70 years. Again, a testament to preventative maintenance and renovations. Our approach is simple. Our superintendent and our strategic plan sets the course and the vision. Then finance and operations collaborate. We then submit or solicit requests from our principals for capital maintenance and capital improvement projects. Those are returned. We turn it over to a needs assessment team. That needs assessment team then scores the projects. They then help us to prioritize those projects for which we are going to present to you tonight. Then we will be asking your approval in 2 weeks at your regular meeting. Once approved, those go to the city budgeting team and then for approval in the overall city CIP. So that is the annual course, and annually we review this for information and updates. Some of the data sources that we use, of course, we go to last year's CIP and CMP, capital maintenance. We used the feasibility study that we completed. We reviewed every single building in Roanoke City Public Schools in August of 2024. We've talked about this a lot in the last several meetings, or several years, or excuse me, the last year and a half with the board. We use functional student enrollment capacities. We use Department of Education information. We look at funding sources and available dollars. I'll cover that in a lot of detail later. Facility maintenance work orders. The school board has 2 policies related to capital improvements. And of course, the requests from our principals, what they need for their buildings. The team that scores, our needs assessment team, uses a couple of items to prioritize our projects. First, they look at improving learning environments. They look at facility maintenance and major system replacements. They look at health, safety, and sustainability upgrades. And we now have to take all of their input, and then we have to navigate the new funding reality that we're dealing with. What I want to note on this page, this is very different from what we have done in years past. You will notice there are 5 columns missing. Those 5 columns are the capital fund balance that we no longer have as a district and has been removed. We are limited now to what the city at this point has still agreed to provide us, and that's $5 million. As you can see, we've got a lot of things that are needed. Each one of those, again, go to the agreed amount from the city. I want to highlight the red bordered, and that is the modular units. We have overcrowding, even with the lowest estimate provided by our third-party review, Future Think. We will still be overcrowded at our high schools. However, based on the new funding reality that we are dealing with, we can't depend on having the ongoing money to pay for the ongoing costs related to trailers at our high schools. So I have left that blank at this point until we go through some of the decisions that will be before the board. That's for the first 5 years. That's our best estimate for those 5 years. And within those 5 years, our estimates can be much better, of course, because we have the ability to forecast, look at inflation and things like that. Moving forward in our next 5 years, we have to look at planning and adaptation strategies. Our annual reevaluation of projects on emerging needs. We try to cluster those projects together to optimize cost and campus aesthetics. We consider warranty expirations, roofs, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing equipment. And then we look at the enhanced cost estimation accuracy updated each year as we get better estimates on those costs. Again, I'd like to point out the change in the chart. We no longer have a capital fund balance to use for local funding from the schools. So we are dependent again on the city's $5 million that at this point they still agreed to. We have stretched that out to cover playgrounds. You will see athletics, floor replacements, demolition. We still don't have a decision from the city if they want to, what they want to do with Raleigh Court. So we have that on the plan still. And other items. I'd like to have a nice shout out to Kevin Bowman, our needs assessment chair, his consultants and team members, Dr. Shawanda Jackson, Miss Tanisha Scales, Mr. Jeff Shawver, Mr. Greg Burgess, and Mr. Don Richardson for their assistance in working through this difficult capital improvement or capital development initiative plan that I've brought to you. I'll take any questions that the board may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perkins. So Ms. Trigg, any questions or comments from you? Ms. Watkins?
No question.
Mr. Lopez Ortiz, any questions for you down there? All right, Ms. Quintana,
No, ma'am, just thank you.
Dr. Jameson.
I have one question. Regarding the $650,000 of a cut for deferred maintenance. I think I have been public about how I feel about deferring deferred maintenance, but given the realities, I guess my question is, as we play that out over time, so it's 650,000 next year. Do we have a sense of escalation over the plan? Will we continue to have to make cuts? Does there become some big decisions that we think may impact our planning going forward? Does it become cumulative? Are we hoping to absorb that and readjust over time? So how are we going to manage this going forward, I think is my bigger question, not anything about this. The rest of it seems.
Great question. First, each year, we'll have to look at the funding provided by the city. We'll have to determine what appropriations we'll need to ask for based on need. Unfortunately, when you defer maintenance, a $3,000 cost for repair, if you do not have that $3,000, could cost $25,000 as an example when you go to repair it. Also, deferring maintenance means that we are cutting items. As an example, we'll be cutting emergency funding. If you remember 2 years ago, we had an HVAC handler or an air handler rooftop go out at one of our elementary schools that was over $250,000 to replace. We no longer have that ability because that is part of the money we cut. So we would have to ask for an appropriation. Depending on the funding position of the city, we don't know that will continue, but what we have deferred this year will have to be addressed at some point. So we have to plan, and that's why we look for health, safety, and immediate building integrity to address those issues. Unfortunately, when you defer that, things like painting go to the wayside. Chipped paint draws away from. And while broken windows theory in law enforcement may have been misused, there is some theory that if it looks good, people will take care of it. And people will take pride in that, and they will enjoy going into a nice school. So we have to consider those things as we go through. But unfortunately, painting and floor replacement take a back seat to HVAC to make sure we got good quality air. The state has changed the law on indoor air quality. It means we have to address accessibility. We have to keep our elevators running because we have students and staff with disabilities that we have to address under ADA. We have to address accessibility to not just our inside our schools, but for students and staff with disabilities to our amenities outside our school. So we have to prioritize those, and other things will fall through the cracks. We hope that it does not last, but in reality, I think we are facing a very difficult situation going forward. That $650,000 now is going to cost us potentially more in the future.
I think I would, thank you. That's a weird, thank you for the answer. I think I would like to ask for my board members for whom will still be here at that time, should we have a $250,000 expense, which, that it be brought to the board, which is new, right? You all always handle it. I think we now need to bring it to the board to consider bringing it forward to ask for additional funding in extraordinary circumstances. I mean, that isn't how we've managed it before under the old funding formula. That's what fund balance and other kinds of considerations were. But I would like us to think about, in the case of outside of our planned events, that we bring that forward. Yes. Because we're not really going to have any sense of how much of that is unless we are talking about it from the dais.
Ms. Watkins, you noted something that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I think it was answered, but I need it answered separately and plainly. Is there no line item in what you showed us? No line item in what you showed us that's a contingency for anything emergent that comes up?
So Ms. Jackson, her team has placed a contingency within the budget that we are presenting to you later in this meeting.
Okay.
And so there is some contingency there. Okay. Keep in mind that contingency is about half of what it should be. Usually you want a 1 to 5% contingency, okay. But we're about a 0.5% of our overall budget.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Cherry?
Questions? Thank you so much.
I did have a couple questions. I noted, I can't recall if it was in your presentation or in the annual report. What are examples of end of life cycle items? Because that was noted that those go straight to the top.
As an example, warranties for large equipment. For instance, a rooftop handler, if the warranty is coming due, then that's an end of life cycle. The repairs then become much more difficult for us to cover. So when you start looking at I use playground as another example. Most of our playgrounds are built to last 20 years. As we approach that 18, 19, 20th year, we need to start looking at how we replace that. That's an end of cycle. Generally, most things have warranties or life expectancies, especially these larger projects.
I did note a lot of the capital maintenance projects. You know, I appreciated that. You know, I wanted to note for people, especially like newer on the board or new to tuning in, that the capital maintenance, you know, projects and that whole plan and that whole rubric and everything, that's only like 2 years old now, maybe 3, for all the capital maintenance that's at the school levels.
That is 3 years old now. We presented that to you 3 years in a row. So this will be our 4th year upcoming.
And I also wanted to note that $5 million, you know, allocation from the city, that's in debt service that then we then pay for the debt service on those dollars that we use for that capital investment to the schools, correct?
That is correct. We pay 100% of our debt service.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. I do appreciate how thorough this is and also you can always go back and look at last year's report and the year before, and you can see that this is not set in stone. It is always being evaluated to make sure that the needs of the entire division are being met in an equitable and responsible way with the resources we have and the needs as they rise to the top. So thank you for that, Mr. Perkins. All right, moving on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Finally, we have an update on the 2026-2027 budget development process. And before we begin, I do want to briefly kind of frame how we are planning to use our time tonight, because this conversation has a lot of moving pieces. And I do want to thank the board for setting aside, again, this work session time to have this important public conversation as we're trying to really meet this moment when it comes to a budget deficit. So we have intentionally structured tonight as a collaborative discussion. You can see members of our team here so that we can answer the questions that you've submitted to us ahead of time, and to receive any additional feedback ahead of your March 10th meeting, when you will be asked to approve the preliminary kind of categorical budget. So we're operating in what we have called, and you've heard Mr. Perkins refer to this as our new funding reality. And I'd like to take a moment to recap what we have previously discussed, again, so that we can level set, so that we can make sure that everyone and the public and everyone has kind of a baseline understanding of where we are today. So over the past 2 years, the City Council has amended the school funding policy 3 times. Most recently, the policy shifted from a guaranteed 40% of estimated revenues to up to 40%, and now to a $106.9 million baseline plus 34% of revenue growth. At the same time, the division was flat funded at $106.9 million last year. So it's really important, and I know that they're getting the clicker ready to advance the slides. But I'll just talk a little bit about who we are before I get into all of that, because I do think it's important for the public to understand, again, who we are as a school division, that, again, we serve nearly 14,000 students, many of whom live in poverty. And so, and we serve several students with special needs and varying levels of student needs, disabilities. We also have a number of English learners We have a number of students receiving gifted and talented services. And we have students who are experiencing some levels of homelessness or food insecurities as well. So we do serve, we have 29 schools, centers, and programs, and we are what I like to call beautifully diverse. And I think it's important that as we get into a budget discussion that we keep that in mind in terms of who we are as a school division. And so I think it's important also for us to think about flat funding, because we hear that term a lot about flat funding. And I mentioned this during the town hall meeting, but I think it's worth repeating. So flat funding does not mean flat costs, right? So while revenue remained level, our expenditures continue to increase due to factors outside of our control. And if we could advance, I think we need to advance the next slide. Yes. For example, the year-over-year cost increases that are outside of our organization's control might include insurance, or salaries, utilities, facilities maintenance, inflation, and other essential services. So over time, the compounding effect of these policy changes creates a projected cumulative difference of nearly $39 million over a 5-year period. That shift significantly alters our financial trajectory. So I just want to reiterate that this shortfall is not the result of overspending or mismanagement on the part of Roanoke City Public Schools. Our audits remain clean, and we have budgeted responsibly. However, the policy changes combined with flat funding and the required return of fund balance removed our financial cushion and created this abrupt structural gap. So at this point, I'd like to ask Mrs. Jackson to chime in here and to take it from here to look at our financial overview, if you will. So Mrs. Jackson, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Chair Mrs. Apel, Vice Chair Mr. Cherry, members of the school board, and Dr. White. I wanted to start off with just kind of some updates to our process and make sure that we are being clear about the numbers, as this is in development. We have updates, every 2 weeks to let you know where we are in the process. So I want to start with kind of a structural change in how we're reporting some of our expenditures to make sure that that's clear. I don't want anyone to be caught off guard when you see this. So this is related to how we report our costs and revenues related to students with intensive support needs. So you may be familiar with this. For years, this was called the Special Education Regional Program, and it is intended to this day to provide support for students, as the name suggests, who have intensive support needs. So you might have a smaller number of students, but they might need more assistance and support than other students. And so one piece of this is kind of the regional aspect, is school divisions potentially working together to support those students. So for example, if we have 3 students who are hearing impaired and maybe a neighboring division has 1 student who's hearing impaired, well, we could host 1 classroom and serve all those students and be more efficient, right? So so that's how this program works. So currently, and we started this when it was a regional program, we accounted for all of those funds in our restricted grants fund so that we could keep track of that. We would transfer our local share for our students who were in the regional classrooms, even if they're in our schools, they're regional classrooms. We would transfer our share of those costs into the grants fund. So we would account for that out of the grants fund. So why I'm bringing this to you and what's changing is just since it became less of a regional, sort of almost like a separate program through this new CISNA funding model, what we're finding is there's not a regional classroom anymore. We have students who are funded partially by the state through the CISNA program, who might be in a classroom with a student who does not qualify as CISNA. And so that makes it complicated, as you can kind of see with my arrows up there, to have some expenses in the general operating fund and some in the grants fund. But it's the same classroom, it's maybe the same teacher, but they're not only serving students with intensive support needs. So it has been recommended to us by our special education department that we streamline that through the general fund. So basically what we are intending to do is make sure that we're reflecting all of those costs that are funded by local and state funds for students with intensive support needs through the general operating fund, so that the costs and the expenses are all in one place and there's less confusion, and we're making sure that we can identify the costs by student. It's not by classroom anymore, since it's no longer a regional program. So the main reason why I'm bringing that to you is because that's going to increase both the revenue and the expenditures that are reflected in the general fund. It is moving those out of the grants fund into the general fund. So as you can see kind of in the yellow part at the top there, we would have a decrease in the grants fund, an increase in the general fund. The net change is 0. So you can see in the blue part at the bottom, kind of where we would be adding those CISNA revenue and expenditures on the general operating side. And so you see here kind of in gray, that's what we looked at, our net difference at the last meeting. We were just under about a $16 million deficit that we will be talking about extensively today. We will still be at that exact number. Just the revenue and the expenditures are a little bit higher. So I didn't want anyone to see that and be like, wait a minute, why did our revenue and expenses go up? So this is why it's just a net difference to improve that reporting, given how the structure of how the state funds students with intensive support needs have changed. So any questions about that before we kind of shift gears? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was
No new
clear.
money, just same money.
Correct.
Just
Being reported and all in the same fund.
I want to make sure that everybody's clear on that.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So let me jump in and talk a little bit about state funding now. Of course, Sunday was Budget Sunday, so we've started to get some information about what the General Assembly is looking to do with the budget. So we don't have a lot of details yet, so I just have sort of some highlights here to share with you. Key among them is that the Senate version of the state budget changes the state share of a raise for standards of quality positions to a 3% raise. The introduced budget in December had the state share of a 2% raise. The House version keeps it at 2%. You can see that both made some changes. There was in the introduced budget some funding for part of a bonus in the current year. Both have changed how they calculate that to a flat amount, and also added some flexibility to carry those funds forward and provide that bonus in fiscal 27 if school divisions desire. So that apparently is in both versions of the budget. So seems likely that change to how that would work will go forward. There are increases to at-risk add-on on both sides, though handled a little bit differently. One thing of note that's of interest that I look forward to getting more information about is the House version. As you can see, there's $400 million in one-time flexible supplemental funding for school divisions there. So while I don't love one-time money, I do like flexible. So that is nice to see. Then we'll get more details about our options there. And then as you can see, both the House and Senate do propose some funding for supporting school construction, a little bit larger amount on the House side than the Senate side. And both support the 1% local option sales tax for school construction. So we'll have to see kind of how that plays out. In terms of getting more details about this, the Virginia Department of Education always kind of analyzes what comes out of each house and provides us with details about what does this really mean for us. It usually takes a couple of weeks for them to be able to provide that. So I imagine in the next few weeks, we'll be getting more details and can bring that to you at our next meeting of what this really in more detail, what this really might mean for Roanoke City Schools. So that is underway. So moving on, before we kind of jump into your questions and the feedback we've gotten, wanted to just take a brief minute and remind you and the public about our methods in approaching the need to reduce our budget. So on the non-personnel side, we have identified criteria that we want to use in guiding us in making objective decisions and what we're evaluating for potential cuts. So the first item is does the program require specialty transportation routes that add costs? So we have a few things that we do that do add additional transportation. So that's something that we have considered. Do the programs go above and beyond what is required by the standards of quality? We have discussed before, and I'm sure it will come up again this evening, that we recognize that the standards of quality are the low bar. I think definitely some work needs to be done there on the state side of what the state supports and requires, but nonetheless, that is kind of the low bar of things we are required to do. So we have to make sure we're meeting those standards of quality. So it is certainly appropriate to at least look at and evaluate anything we're doing that is not required. Are there additional personnel required to provide the program or service? So again, an added cost above and beyond kind of the basic level of service. And then lastly, can the program or service be retained through a different service model? Is there another way that perhaps is less costly that we should be considering? And then on the personnel side.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, student representative, Dr. White. As a recap, we mentioned before, we want to make sure we have an objective way in terms of when we're identifying which positions to reduce when it comes to staffing. So we have 5 areas of criteria. The first one is the position currently vacant or filled, or do we know that it will be vacant in 26, 27? And we are receiving resignations and retirements daily. And again, our contracts are set to go out in a month or so. The second option to look at is how's the position funded? Is it a grant? Is it grant funded or is it general funds? The third is the position above the number position required by standard or quality, or is it not required? So we use that as a criteria. The fourth one is a position in a subject or field that is designated as hard to staff, and we use the Virginia Department of Education terms defines what is hard to staff in terms of those positions. And then the last we look at is this position mission critical based on student achievement data and strategic plan goals. So those are the 5 criteria that we use when evaluating vacant or filled positions moving into the 26-27 school year.
So thank you, Mrs. Jackson and Mr. McKee for that. Just a little bit about the community feedback. I know the school board and your questions you asked about the feedback that we've received thus far, and you're curious about how all of that has gone. So I just want to give you an overview of that. We have received a large amount of feedback over the past month. We hosted, as Mrs. Apel reminded everyone, right? We had a virtual budget town hall meeting on February 5th. We had small group breakout sessions during that town hall meeting to allow for deeper conversations. Since then, and you can see with the virtual town hall meeting in terms of 282 attendees, that was that night. That does not account for the many people who went back to watch the town hall meetings after that, which was over about 700 views, I believe. So again, lots of participation there, and we are very, very appreciative of that. Since then, we have met with the Roanoke Education Association, my Superintendent's Teacher Advisory Council, the Superintendent's Business Advisory Council, preschool and Plato teachers. We've met with central office staff, and we will attend tomorrow's Central Council PTA meeting as well. So again, very, very appreciative of everyone lending their voices to this very important topic. We've also read every comment submitted through the feedback form and every email sent to the school board and to division leadership. So again, thank you for that feedback. We have been intentional about creating multiple opportunities for stakeholder groups to weigh in, and we continue to listen carefully to the perspectives that have been shared, and that will continue to be shared. So across those conversations and across the written feedback, clear themes have emerged. And so I thought the board would be interested in hearing about those themes again, so that we're not going to go over every single comment because again, there were so many, but we were able to group them into themes. So certain topics have surfaced repeatedly, reflecting both concern and a deep care for our students and staff. So in a few moments, our team will walk through those recurring themes and how they're informing the options that are before you at this point in time. So one of the first themes that I'll talk about is protecting Plato and gifted programs. Plato was the most frequently mentioned topic, and parents, teachers, and community members emphasize that Plato fosters necessary academic and social emotional growth that cannot be cut according to the feedback that we've received. Respondents pointed out that eliminating Plato would save less than 1% of the gap while causing trauma by breaking peer groups and crowding general education classes. Specific suggestions mirrored those from the town hall, consolidating the centers. That was one suggestion, providing kind of hybrid options, allowing families to handle transportation, using virtual or, again, hybrid options, exploring donor support, and phasing changes gradually. So again, we're going to speak to that tonight, and we'll stop periodically as we go through. I'm going to go over the general themes, but then that's also how we're going to structure the conversation tonight, and we'll stop along the way to allow time for questions and conversation. Another theme was program cuts and staffing reductions. There were objections to proposed cuts, especially to activity buses, field trips, and the 3-year-old preschool program. Staff and parents fear larger class sizes, a loss of specialized programs, and damage to school culture. Several asked whether central office positions and convocation could be cut instead, which of course we are looking at all of that. Also, another theme was about transportation and activity buses. So according to the feedback, activity buses are critical for students who rely on after-school programs and athletics. Suggestions included allowing high school students to ride city buses for free, partnering with radar or faith-based organizations, charging modest fees, and reducing the number of routes. There was also general transportation suggestion of whether we can have families opt in to ride the school bus to further cut down on routes rather than creating routes for all students. And again, we'll talk through all of those this evening. Another theme was on student behavior, school climate, and safety. Teachers and parents described rising behavioral issues and mental health needs. They felt there was nowhere to cut from in the schools because staff already struggle to meet students' needs in those areas. Several suggested that reducing support staff or class size protections would exacerbate discipline problems. Some questioned also why RCPS funds school resource officers when many divisions have it paid for by the cities that they're in, so in other jurisdictions. Another theme had to do with community advocacy and partnerships. Respondents urged RCPS to advocate for the restoration of the funding formula with the city and to push back against the policy change. And I'll just say here that now we've heard feedback from some asking us to with the city, and I just want to be clear that we have met with the city, and I know that the school board has a relationship with city council members as well in terms of that working relationship and communication. So I do want the public, I want you to know that those conversations have happened. And so we talked to them multiple times since this discussion first began. And many of us were part of a task force that looked at the proposed policy that was approved. And during that task force, we provided the city with an impact analysis of what could happen. And so we have provided that information, and we have raised questions, and we have advocated for our students' needs. And I'll just say that advocacy is not resistance, and that asking questions plus advocacy equals doing our due diligence. That does not equate to resistance. I'd just like to say that for the record. So several suggested forming partnerships with local businesses and churches and nonprofits to support transportation, fundraising, and program costs. And REA leaders requested to work more closely with us and to provide professional development and those kinds of things. And again, I just want to thank our teachers and staff and community partners for rolling up their sleeves and asking what they can do to help. And so we're really appreciative of that. Another theme that came out of this was about teacher pay and compensation. And we've received some mixed feedback on the raises, on whether to provide a 2% pay raise during this budget crisis. Others argue that competitive salaries are necessary to recruit and retain staff by securing matching funds. So a few suggested asking teachers whether they would voluntarily defer raises to save programs like Plato, while others emphasized that staff deserve fair compensation and should not bear the burden of the funding cuts. Another theme that has emerged has to do with facilities, overcrowding, and infrastructure. Questions and concerns about overcrowded high schools and how this deficit will affect building a third high school. Several questions regarding how returning Plato to schools would affect classroom space. And we're going to talk about all of those things again tonight. So again, kind of hold on for the ride. As you can see, we're going to be here for a little bit, but we do want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence by addressing what the members of the public and our staff members have brought to us, as well as the questions that you've submitted to us as well. So again, technology and devices, that was another theme. Now, there was limited feedback here, but there were a few comments asking whether leasing fewer devices or reducing the one-to-one student to device ratio could save funds, and requests to revisit educational technology subscriptions would help as well. So again, we have taken these themes directly from the feedback that we have received. And I also want to thank you as school board for your thoughtful questions as well throughout this process. Your questions are our questions as well. And so they have shaped our analysis, sharpened our thinking, and informed the options that we are presenting tonight. You have asked about the impact of the options on students and staff. You have asked about sustainability and equity and a long-term structural balance. You've asked about leadership, central office, and whether reductions are being considered at every level of the organization. And those questions are reflected in the information that you will see this evening. For example, at the division leadership level, after conducting a side-by-side analysis comparing current staffing to pre-pandemic levels, the division has 2 more division leadership team level positions today than we had prior to COVID. That analysis has been part of our review as we evaluate staffing across the organization. Now, as we move through the presentation, you will see how board questions, community feedback, and leadership analysis have intersected to inform the options currently on the table. So as you know, now move on here, that as you know, we've currently built in a 2% raise in the budget, but there are trade-offs to that. And I'd like to just jump in here with talking about the personnel piece. Again, we're going to go to the most impactful part of trying to meet this moment with this budget deficit. And the most impactful, again, we're in a people business and we need people for our young people, right? And so 75% of the budget is in our people resources. And so personnel, we'll talk about that, and then we'll get into operations and some of the teaching and learning impacts as well. So I just wanted to say that, again, we've built in a 2% raise there. And so when you see the projected costs here, if you're looking on the screen, you can see that a 2% raise is a $3.4 million cost. The state would fund about $1.6 million of that cost, but as a school division, we would have to match that with $1.8 million. and then a 3% raise, because keep in mind that the House is proposing a 2%, as Kathleen shared, as Mrs. Jackson, I'm sorry, shared. The Senate is proposing a 3% raise. So that's why we wanted to offer both and show both here to see what the fiscal impact would be. So at a 3% raise, that's a $5 million projected cost. The state would then fund 2.4 million of that, and then the school board would need to fund $2.7 million of that. Now, if we go with no raises, we would leave that state money kind of on the table, but going with no raises could save about 20 or more positions by cutting the $1.8 million from the deficit. So, so that is something that again, we wanted to bring to your attention for your consideration. We've also been talking about furloughs, which would be an alternative to reducing salaries for central office administrators, and looking at 5 days for central staff, including coordinators and above, which legally would have to be 5 consecutive days. Isn't that right, Mr. Collins? That would have to be 5 consecutive days.
For exempt employees,
For exempt employees, yes.
because of the salary basis test, you run the risk of, because employees have to be paid for partial work weeks if they're exempt. So it's safer to do a full work week.
So that would save the division about $150,000, which is the equivalent of approximately 2 positions. And again, every position counts here. So this would mean everyone in positions from coordinator and up, so coordinators, supervisors, directors, and above, including myself, would have these 5 furlough days. Again, at this moment, this is what we believe is an all-in moment. And therefore, the proposal about the furloughs would have to include all of us. And that, in my opinion, that means me too. So again, from the last presentation, we are estimating about 150 positions affected, which would cover 12 million of the $16 million deficit. And given that there has not been an opportunity to kind of off-ramp following the City Council's January 20th decision, this is kind of where we are. This equates to a 6% reduction of school-based positions and a 10% reduction of central office-based positions. And certainly in any areas where we need to realize a reduction in force, we would follow the laws and the policies around a reduction in force. Certainly where positions do need to be filled, we'll look to fill those with transfers. So people may not have the same job, but we're trying to do our best to make sure that they have a job. And so we've talked to central office about that as well. So I'll stop right there before I turn it over to Mr. McKee and ask school board members if you have any questions about what I've presented thus far.
Okay, and so I think we'll go ahead and start on this side first. So I'll go with Ms. Quintana and then Mr. Lopez Ortiz. If you all have any questions, so none for you, okay, Ms. Quintana?
It's a lot. It really is a lot. And so back to the furloughs, that's what I'm confused. It has to be 5 days or 4?
Yeah, it has to be 5, correct?
That's correct, Dr. White.
It has to be, there's no, take one day, one another week.
You can do it, but it's trickier and you run the risk of violating the Fair Labor Standards Act, because exempt employees, even if they work a partial work week, under the salary basis test, under the Fair Labor Standards Act, they still need to be paid their salary even if they work a partial work week. However, if they are out for an entire week, they don't need to be, yeah, correct.
Okay.
Dr. Jameson?
I was just going to go back to a a clarification, maybe it's for me, but we talked as criteria for the cut early on. So back with that, we are talking about standards of quality positions. And I just want to take a minute to be clear. We talk about those a lot. Be clear that those are the positions that the state funds at 100%. Yes?
You know, the state doesn't fund any positions at 100%.
That's right. Let's remind us that these are the positions we get money for from the state.
Correct. That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
So then the state sort of estimates the cost of those positions, and then they use a local composite index to decide how much they feel that your locality should be able to cover of that.
Right.
And how much the state will cover. So roughly the state covers about 2/3 and expects our locality to cover 1/3.
And I'd like to just so, if you wouldn't mind, to remind all of us what kinds of positions that might surprise people are not included in SOQ that we have today.
Sure. So yeah, there's not a whole group of positions that we choose to have that are not included in the SOQs. Really, when we talk about positions that are not included, we're talking about more of those positions that are absolutely required than the state helps us fund. So like let's take I don't think I have the exact numbers in my head, but let's take kindergarten aides, for example. So the state only funds maybe half of what we actually need in our classrooms. And we're not, having 6 aides in every classroom or anything like that. I think we staff at maybe 1 for every 2. So it's not like we're going above and beyond. Another really sort of egregious example, in my opinion, is assistant principals. I mean, the state SOQs would fund, I think, maybe 2 half-time assistant principals at the elementary level. I mean, we have schools with 500, 600, close to 700 kids. And so I think everybody who's been in a school would agree that in some of our particularly larger schools, at least one full-time assistant principal probably makes a lot of sense. And so we get almost no state help for any assistant principals at the elementary level, just as a couple of examples.
If I recall correctly, as a priority of the board, not so many years ago, we certainly worked to increase our ratios for social work and mental health providers in our schools and supports.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I think I'm reminding myself, but also putting a finger on the depth of the point of the pain this is. And lastly, is my math right? Is this basically for this 1 year, essentially a 15-ish% cut from what we would have hoped to have had equivalently? I'm sorry.
I don't
that's
think I can do that math.
That's not math, and that's not fair.
On the spot.
I'm saying former school board member Dick Willison's. When I was working with it earlier, let me not put you on the spot. Let me say this.
Public math.
The percent that I was coming up with is far more than any percent cut of any organization I've ever worked with before I am old now, during a variety of economic circumstances. So thank you for working on this, because this is hard. I'm done. Thank you.
Can I jump into with that? I want to note so standards of quality are they also required for us to meet accreditation, that we have to meet those standards of quality, like that minimum?
Yes, ma'am.
usually? So one of the things that we usually advocate for is no unfunded mandates, for example, but when it's funded in part by the state, and then your locality has a required contribution. Our city's required contribution did change for this incoming fiscal year as well. So our city has flat funded basically us, but their required contribution has actually gone up, which means the amount of compensation, the amount of revenue that we're getting towards standards of quality positions is kind of in effect also getting cut in that way. But I do remember the kindergarten one. I think it was either at the Take Your Legislators to School Day or a joint city council school board meeting. And it's basically like one aide to every 11 kindergarten classes is what is funded at Standards of Quality. And I also noted by the independent third party JLARC study that they recommend a 300% increase in monies for like administration at school level. Like that's just one line item that they recommend that the state should support funding wise. So to meet true minimum level of education, quality education at the state level.
Yes, I think those variances in that JLARC report were pretty eye-opening in how they showed what the Standards of Quality Fund, what school divisions in Virginia are doing, and then even further above that is what their independent review said, this is really what you should be doing.
So if we were doing a needs-based budget, we would use the JLARC recommendations. Just a thought.
Sorry, I lost track of where we were. So Dr. Jameson, any other questions or inquiries from you? All right, sorry, Ms. Trigg.
Question in reference to the reduction in force. How much have we realized that that's going to cost us in doing RIFs? Don't we have to provide packages when we release
We're
positions?
still working on the exact number in terms of number of positions. So we're going through staffing right now. So we'll have a better picture in a few weeks once we get through staffing. We also have to, once we get through staffing, we then have to get through contracts. And then we'll have a true picture of vacancies and RIFs and whatnot. But at this point, we're unable to provide that information, but we can have that shortly.
Right, but I guess what I'm wanting everyone to understand, especially the public, that when a RIF happens, it's also money involved to pay them out of their position, right? Like, does a package have to go with that? A severance package or anything?
Mr. Collins?
I will verify that, but I don't think so since we're a public employee. We're not subject to the WARN Act that private employers are. Is that what you're referring to, Ms. Trigg?
Yeah.
There's a federal law known as the WARN, W-A-R-N Act that requires certain things be made when there comes to reduction in forces. We're not bound by those requirements being a public body, public agency.
Costas, just.
Thank you, Ms. Trigg. Ms. Watkins.
Quickly review the timeline between correct or intense month. Are those coordinated well?
Yes, our goal is to, if we can get contracts out by March 25th through 27th, and then we will get the decisions back in by April the 10th. But if we're going to RIF someone at the latest, we have to let them know by June 15th. But we're trying to do that as quickly as we can so people can have the opportunity to prepare for other employment opportunities if they need to do so.
So you have between April 10th and
June 15th is the latest we need to let them know.
make adjustments, like you could, if you mapped out which position met the criteria for elimination, you still have that window in case someone says, oh, I think I'm gonna go ahead and retire, I've had enough, right? Then you could swap something out, you have.
Yes, yes. Our goal is to have it way before June 15th, but that is correct.
Okay. And then are we approving these in any way, or are you making these
No,
decisions?
tonight is for a work session just
I
for
mean,
the
in the
school
end,
boards.
ultimately.
Ultimately, these
Personnel list.
decisions will be approved through your personnel list as well as through the overall budget. So again, for your budget approval, this will inform a lot of the moving forward, how we move forward. So for your March 10th meeting, again, this is, we kind of need to feel our way forward and see which way the board would like to go so that we can include this in the overall budget.
Okay, and then that timeline ends, so after June, will we see that list again? That personnel list again before? Like, are we approving it, personnel list, and what rifts will happen prior to that window between April and?
Ms. Watkins, the goal is to, if we have to riff someone, we have to put them on the personnel report. So the board would have to approve that personnel report. And our goal is to do it before, June 15th. And if there's any riffs after that, then we'll handle it on an individual basis.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And you were kind of thinking, what dates would those personnel lists be visible? And it'd be the first meeting of each month
Yeah.
from April,
April, May, June.
and June.
Yes.
Because the June one would happen before June 15th.
Yes, yes.
I presume. Yeah, I was looking at a calendar.
Thank you. I wasn't looking at a calendar, but I wanted to get it right in my
Okay.
head. Thank you.
Mr. Cherry?
So we would remain overcrowded. It would be up to the scheduling of our counselors and our principals and the teams at those schools to address that. Keep in mind, that 4.3 million only pays to put them in.
Correct.
There is an ongoing cost up to $3 million to maintain that, and there is no guarantee that we can meet that obligation. That's why it is proposed to not do that.
Just something to throw out there, because we didn't say the whole picture like you just said. That number, that 4.3 is to just put it in. Then I also want to thank our chair and Dr. White for making those disclaimers before we started this presentation to make the public aware that, first off, let me say, this is very frustrating and it's very heartbreaking. One, I think since I've been on the board, we've never had this much discord with our city council. I think every interview I've had, I've always mentioned that we've always had good synergy. But my hope is that through this time, that will restore some of the synergy between city council and school board. We have a buddy system that has been proven here lately to be ineffective, but I'm hoping that we can restore some of this relationship. The greatest asset you have, we can talk numbers all day, but I firmly believe the greatest assets that anybody can have is your relationships. So I'm hoping that we can restore some of that, because to say that we're pulling on people's heartstrings is not good enough of an answer. To say that we're being resistant is not good enough of an answer for our kids. So I just wanted to put that out there. I am extremely frustrated and almost at the point of tears as a parent and as a school board member to think about my daughter, and I'm very open about that. I know we're doing a good job with all of the considerations, and it's a stressful season, but at the same time, we can talk numbers. The core of the issue is, I'm gonna call a thing a thing. The core of the issue is we need to figure out a way to restore the relationships. I know we're all tense. It's a tense season, but at the end of the day, we are leaders of this city, both school board and Roanoke City's council. And I'm hoping that through this, we'll come together and figure this out, because the answers that I've been seeing and some of the underlining conversation just has been very disheartening. So I just wanted to make sure that the public knows we do have a buddy system, and the school board, I think we're doing a good job in making sure we keep transparency at the front of the table. So.
Can I piggyback just one thing on Mr. Cherry? I thank you, Mr. Cherry. You just opened I think, a floodgate, but let me just say that.
And I don't mean to cut you off. It has to. We
It had to be said.
Like this is, and I don't mean to be frustrated. I've been kind of holding it in, been quiet. We can be poised all day, but Dr. White says it best. We are a people business. And when you look at everybody in this room, y'all breathing. That means you have a heart. So when we do stuff like this, it's because we care and it's because we have hearts. You're gonna pull on the heartstrings of people. So I'm really hurt by just this conversation. I've been on this board since I was 28 years old. I'll be 35 this year. And I have never seen so much frustration, sadness, discord, disrespect on both sides. And at what point do we say it's about the children, not about our titles, not about what we do in the community? It's about our children. And I don't mean to, you all know how I am, so I apologize in advance, but that's the core of where my heart is we have to restore the relationships. We can figure it out all day long, but we're trying to figure it out and we're hurt. We're trying to figure it out. I see staff members' heads down. I see kids that came in our school board meeting, all right, begging us not to take away programs. And we sat here and boo-hooed. Let's come together and figure it out. Our sheriff says it the best way. We do it better when we do it together. And I really hope that we can restore that. I didn't mean to cut you all off. So
That's okay. That's okay. I did want to add just one thing. When we talk about restoring the relationships, you mentioned our buddy systems. We have been working on those relationships. We have been going to breakfast, to lunch, to coffee. We have been, doing everything short of begging for our funding for our schools. And we've tried to compromise, if this, then that. Please don't take our fund balance if you flat fund us. We've tried to negotiate, but the bottom line is we don't have a negotiation tool. We are appointed by City Council and they own our funding. And so we operate at their will of what they want to do. We have had that funding formula changed more, I would say, more times than underwear, but we have had that formula changed so many times. I was on the joint budget committee. We have changed out members of the committee for different perspectives. We have done absolutely everything that we can do to be good partners. So the only thing, and it's not a disagreement with you, it's just making a point that we have done our part. If you could only be a fly on the wall, people, of the conversations that we've had, from the questioning, wanting to understand, to the frustration in our hearts and voices, and to the contentious, the tense conversations, to flat out please begging, right? We've done it all. And the last thing that I will say is this: one of the most the most hurtful thing is taken away from the children, but the second most hurtful thing is questioning our motives and questioning what we've done with our funds. I think the question should be asked, why do you need these funds so bad? What did you do with your funds?
And I'm gonna piggyback on that. I just want to say, we do have a buddy system, but a buddy system will only function if the other party will be as transparent as we are. And I've told my colleagues here, I come into this building to check up on the employees once a week. That's what I do. And to see them how they are today, it breaks my heart. To hear the lies, the accusations is just ridiculous. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. The one thing this board has is we are transparent. We say it, and we say it in front of you guys, and we say it in closed doors. We are not getting that same reciprocation from them. We are not. That is not how it's working. I just hope they realize that all of this is gonna affect an all-time American city Because when people are looking for a place to move, they are looking at the cost of living, they are looking at the jobs, and they are looking at the schools. This is something that is gonna affect the city of Roanoke for years to come, way past any one of us in this board is in this board. And I'm sorry, I just had to say it.
So I do want to thank my fellow board members because they've all alluded to it, that we are to a person committed to the success of our students in this division. And you do not see all the conversations and research that is done throughout the city and throughout the division and at the schools to try to make sure that we are representing all 13,000 plus 25 students, 2,500 plus employees for the good of our students. And, you know, we have parents of, you know, former students on this board, neighbors of students on this board, friends who are teachers. 5 of us have children at all levels in this division, and we live the decisions that we make. You know, I have a child that gets on a bus at 6:40 and then another one that gets on at 9:01. You know, and navigating all of those things. So we live those decisions, and I do want to note that education is ongoing. It will continue. There will always be students in Roanoke who need to be served and who should have access to an excellent education. And so that goes beyond just this year's budget, and we will continue to advocate for that because that's what our job is, and that's what we really try to do, and we try to be very responsible and transparent with keeping the main thing. And it does take that partnership, and I do believe that rising tides lift all boats, and that, like, I love how VSBA put it. We really are education is planting the seed for the success and the ability for the entire city to thrive. And so that's what we're all about. And as the schools go, so does the city. So thank you for all that. To change gears back to where we were, I did have a clarification question regarding the prior slide on personnel. Do we have to hit the entire 3% to be eligible with the raises, or can we do partial percent on the raise? Or like, are we tied to the entire percentage amount, be able to get any of it from the state?
While I haven't seen the specifics at this point, typically the state does put language in the budget bill that says you can prorate it. So if we were to do a 1% or a 2%, let's say that the state approves that 3%, that we could receive some portion of state funding based on whatever we do. That has been how it has happened in the past. So I would be surprised if that's not the language in the final approved budget.
Okay. Thank you for that.
But we did that. Did we make it clear that we stretched that raise across all of our customary way is to not just give to SOQ positions? We stretched that among all of our employees. And so
yeah, it would be virtually impossible to identify, as we were discussing earlier, a kind of, you know, we have, you know, this number of counselors, let's say only this number are actually receive partial funding from SOQ. Which ones are the SOQ counselors and which one are not? That would be impossible to determine that. So we always do make a decision about whatever, if we can do a raise, that it would be the same across all of our positions, regardless of whether we get partial funding or not from the state for that. So as long as we would have to certify to the state that we did that's usually how it works, an average of what have you, whatever, 2%, 3%, whatever it is, to qualify to receive that portion of the state funds.
Gotcha.
Okay. Can you go back one slide just so we can look at those numbers? So the with the raises, yes. So the local added costs, say for the 2% raise, that includes going through all positions and that's the local share.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
That's an
Okay.
average 2% across all positions.
And
yeah.
we could do a 1% raise. We aren't required to do a 2% to get any of the state funds. We could do a 1%, or I just want to be clear on what is within our power to do to be eligible for state funds. Okay.
So it would just be prorated. So, what we would get roughly 800,000 in that example. If the state approved a 2%, we only did a 1%, we would get half of
Okay.
what the state would otherwise fund.
Okay.
And
Got it.
with that, it has to be a raise. It can't be used as like broken into like a bonus or anything. It just has to
That is
be a raise.
typically the case. Again, and we'll have to see kind of the language that is in the ultimate budget, but typically it is specific to a raise. Yes.
Okay. All right.
All right, very good. And thank you for that discussion. I know that the board also had questions about retention rates and also had questions about the research and what does the research say when it comes to organizational change or in this regard in terms of reduction in force and those kinds of things. So Mr. McKee, would you talk about that?
Thank you, Dr. White. So right here, we just want to remind everybody of our retention rates over the past 5 years. And if you pay attention to 24, 25, as you can see, our retention rates have been pretty good. Almost 90% teachers and professionals, 87% administrators, 85% classified. We've been trending in the right direction. Now, comparing us to other urban school divisions last year, we were better, 4 to 7% better than other urban school divisions. So, we're doing a great job. So we put this up there because these decisions that we have to make in a couple of weeks will impact our retention rates, because when you look at the class sizes going up, when you look at raises or no raises, when you look at additional work that everybody has to do, this is going to have an impact. We might not see it next year, but we will see it the year after that and year after that. So just wanted to make sure everybody knows that these decisions will impact us, and not only our staff, but impact our students. Because when you have more kids in a class and you have our staff that is already stressed out, the anger has moved from being angry to being terrified. It adds upon what our employees are feeling, which means, unfortunately, it shows in the classroom. So then our students start to feel that. So it impacts the schools, the students, and as well as the staff. So we looked at research and how this impacts the reduction of force or reduction of staff. We broke it down into 3 different sections. How does it impact our employees? Well, we talked a little bit about the increased workload causes our employees to be burnt out and higher absenteeism rates. So, and also we talked about our employees feeling anxious right now, and plus the ones that stay will feel survivor syndrome in terms of they'll be angry, they'll be anxious, they'll have reduced trust. And then we'll also, again, we talked about the turnover. Looking at the students, it will impact student behavior. It will impact student achievement. Again, when you have larger class sizes, you're going to have more behavior problems and whatnot. And our teachers and our instructional staff and our administrators are going to have to deal with that. So when you zoom out and look at the organizational structure, how that impacts it, it could possibly impact the trust and morale within the buildings. And then we have to also monitor the psychological risk in terms of mental health. We have to make sure that we have EAP available to our staff, and we might need to look at mental health days and whatnot. So how can we capture this is one of the questions. We would have to do a climate and culture survey at the end of next year with our staff at central office, at the school level, as well as with our students, to see how has this year impacted, and we can look at an outside agency that can come in and develop that climate and culture survey, and then help us interpret it and see what we need to do moving on. But we would do that. We would recommend we do that for the next couple of years, because this is going to have a multi-year impact on how are these reduction in staff, how's this going to impact our staff, how it will impact our students, and how it will impact us as an organization. So we added the references for you if you want to see exactly where we got our research from. So I want to pause there I didn't say as much as Ms. Perkins usually says, but I want to pause there and see if you have any questions.
Just so that the board knows as well, you do have a printed copy of the entire presentation so that you can use it as a resource beyond the school board meeting tonight. So I just want to thank our team for creating that resource for you. So again, if you wanted to look up these references, you can take a look for yourselves. Any questions on that part in terms of retention rates or any of the?
I would say on the retention, and is there anything else that we as the board can do? Is there anything else? Um, again, I come on the weekly, say hi. I just want to make sure the employees that we have know that we care, they feel supported, and that they're not alone in this. And I want our students to know that we are trying our best to give you the best education we can with what we have right now.
Well, I'll just chime in here just to say that I think that that's important. I think it's important for all of us to continue to express that. But I also think that there are other ways for us to kind of show appreciation and to make sure that we are demonstrating that, engaging in various partnerships. Again, we're looking at ways to provide unique opportunities for our students, and then also partnering. I know that there was a question from the school board about the Education Foundation. And so again, the Education Foundation is rebuilding at this time. But I know that that's another way that perhaps if through the foundation, there could be grant opportunities to schools or scholarship opportunities for students. So I think we can be creative in how we're showing that type of appreciation. But again, I think words matter. And I think that it's important for us to express how we feel about our employees and our students as well.
Dr. White, were there any other, Dr. Jameson?
It's just not really a question, it's a request, it's preliminary, it's too early to do anything about this. There is, and I'll look for it myself too, some research out there about best practices post-trip. Because of all of the well-articulated repercussions of what we're about to face, there are things you can actually do because what we're doing is reshaping a culture, right? Around our core values and around our tenets. But the question becomes, how do we address that for our employees, et cetera, right? I mean, we wouldn't be doing any of this if we had choices, but there are some things that we should be thinking about organizationally, and that may even affect policy.
Thank you. Very good. And thank you, Mr. McKee, for that. There were a number of questions related to operational considerations as well. And so for that, I'll turn it to Mr. Perkins. We need to advance the slide first. We could advance that slide. Right. So, Mr. Perkins, if you can go over the operational considerations. You heard the feedback from the public about several of these items, so we wanted to take time and do our due diligence to go over each of these.
Thank you, Dr. White. I hope to answer all the questions that we've received. I know I won't answer all of them, but I'll give an attempt at it. I'm in the unique position in that I've been in budget development on the city side and the school side going back to the recession when I was deputy chief at the police department. We're not just scrubbing our budget, we're gutting it. And I want to be real clear about that. Nobody's ever accused me of being warm or fuzzy. But let me explain a couple of things. One, what we are proposing, we don't want to do. There is nothing in this list that we want to do. And yes, that may be pulling heartstrings, but when you're in a position like this, we've got to address these things. So first, I'm going to briefly hit all of these and go into detail for each one. We are proposing to eliminate activity buses. We are proposing to eliminate Play-Doh routes, reduce 3-year-old preschool routes for general education, and the reliance on non-school transports. That is individual point-to-point transportation mandated for students with disabilities who have individual education plans or McGinney-Vento students. We have to meet those needs. So we have to have buses, which means eliminating that reliance on non-school bus transport puts extra pressure on the district, or the division. We are proposing to defer facility and grounds maintenance along with other operational resources. We are proposing technology equipment cuts and software and equipment. We are proposing reducing funding and materials and supplies for athletics. And that's about a little over $3 million. So let's break it down individually. First, let's start with activity buses. We don't want to do this. We know our kids depend on those activity buses, and we know that staying connected keeps them safe. However, it is a special above what is required. Keep in mind that transportation for general education students is a privilege. However, we go above and beyond because our students need more, which is why we spend more per student in this division. Right now, we serve on our activity buses anywhere from a daily average of 154 to 173 students. That's about 1.3% of our entire enrollment. However, that's 1.3% that we want to continue to do this for, but we have to put this on the proposal. Our service provides direct transportation to their regular bus stop or to their residence because it is after dark in most cases. We serve 2 to 3 buses at every every middle and high school in our division, and we run 2 shifts at our high schools. We benchmarked Region 6 and other urban schools to include Danville, Newport News, Lynchburg, Portsmouth, Richmond, and then Division 6 schools. Some things that I want to point out from those. One school division, an urban school division, is just like us. They're proposing to cut that service. 2 school divisions, urban, they provide transportation to a central location. Keep in mind, a central location, as a caveat, still costs us money. And the remaining, 2 urban divisions are going to maintain theirs because they're not facing cuts. Another 6 do not provide this transportation, and all of those are around us in the immediate area. We are unique in Roanoke because of the needs of our students. There's been questions about can we meet or work with Valley Metro? Absolutely. For the last 3 years, we have brought this up several times when it comes to transportation. Valley Metro offers for $28 unlimited student transport over a 31-day period. Based on our numbers, it would cost us just over $24,000 to do that. But keep in mind, while most of our schools are served that I have identified, middle and high school, with a stop, we are limited to the routes that Valley Metro runs. Another suggestion was let's partner with Radar. We contacted the executive director at Radar because we got excited. We were told that, it could be pro bono. That's absolutely not true. The executive director said that would be $80 an hour. And that's before they have to figure out if they could have the equipment to do it. That would actually be $345,000 to do that. So we can't do it. A lot of questions are being, well, can we partner? And, what we need is sustainability. And yes, there could be a donation. You're absolutely right. And there could be volunteers, but donations and volunteers wane and memories fade. We need an endowment that's substantial and sustainable if we're going to do this and this proposal is accepted. Again, we don't want to do it, but we're in a position to where we have to because we got to maintain our core services. And we got to look at, using a butcher's analogy, you got to cut the fat and you want to avoid cutting the meat and the bone. And unfortunately, we're going to get to the bone on some of these. let's talk about deferred facilities and maintenance. This one's a tough one, as I've already mentioned, when it comes to our capital maintenance. That is a testament to keeping the average age of over 70 years for our buildings going. If you've ever worked in operations, you don't know, it's easy to look at operations for cuts, but you don't understand. It's the buildings, it's getting the kids there, it's having a good environment that makes sure that, we're good at instruction and we reduce class size, and we're good at construction to reduce class size. That's what the division's been all about. However, our proposals mean we're increasing class size and we're reducing construction, and we may affect instruction. So these cost-saving measures are, we're cutting capital emergency funds. For example, we have to cut $100,000 in emergency fund for major equipment replacement. We'll have to go for an appropriation if something breaks. We're taking $181,000 as an example, and we're cutting that from the capital maintenance budget. Principals will not get any of their requests, unfortunately, unless it's related to health, safety, or the building integrity. On-call and vendor services, we depend on that. As an example, when a sewer or a pipe backs up because we flushed wipes and we have to clean that out, sometimes that exceeds the capabilities of our plumbers that we have on staff, and we need an on-call service to do that. We're cutting the on-call vendor services. Painting, sometimes these projects are huge, and the 2 painters and carpenters that we have, that's difficult for them to keep up with it, so we have to cut that. Vendor services, environmental cleanup, emergency cleanup, we have to cut those. Equipment and infrastructure, we have to defer projects such as ductwork at one of our elementary schools, the replacement of hot water heaters at one of our elementary schools, various electrical and plumbing upgrades for janitor chemical generators. Keep in mind, we're trying to go green, and we're doing things that are important, but we have to cut those activities. We're cutting fleet. One of the things that people brag about is they see our cars go through the city and they're electric, and that helps us save money. We lease those because that's a cost-saving effort, do an audit from the city auditor, and we may have to cut some of those. Not may, we're proposing we cut some of those. The financial impacts on those could be, as an example, $3,000 repair today that we can't get, could be $25,000 tomorrow. It creates instability. Our response times are reduced. Our compliance and environmental activities and meeting standards of quality for indoor air quality could be impacted. And it's morale, a deteriorating facility, ladies and gentlemen. People lose pride in that. And we've got great facilities. Just go around this region and look at other schools and compare them to ours. Keep that in mind. Grounds and landscaping. One of the things you can say about Roanoke City Public Schools is that when you pull up to our buildings, our landscaping is great. Our fields look good. Our kids, we have D2 or D1 facilities when you start looking at our sports complexes. However, we have to push and defer the maintenance for a project at one of our middle school fields. We were hoping to reduce the crown, put irrigation, and address pooling of water and other things. We've got to push that. We're also looking at extending our mowing cycles. I don't know if you remember during the recession, the city extended their mowing cycles in the parks. Anybody remember what the parks look like? You had grass up to your knees. We're looking at going from a 14 to 15-day cycle, and the frequency reducing it by 30 to 35% to a 22-day cycle. That's a tremendous impact on us. Technology, we're looking at an $800,000 cut. And let me explain what occurred with the ESSER money and during the pandemic. We went one-to-one. Our IT team, and this is one of the things that people say we got too many people in central office. Well, let me explain. Our IT team takes care of over 20,000 devices. They manage nearly $5 million in programs and software. We have to cut some of those, and we have to give up the leases to maintain adequate devices, and we have to look at spending money to maintain that. But let me explain, part of that $800,000 cut in technology that we're proposing, $600,000 of that is going out of the lease and buying those computers, those devices. What that means is 3 to 4 years, we've only kicked it down the road at $600,000 in savings in the lease. And then we got to buy new equipment because they become antiquated. I mean, think of your iPhones. You know, how many in here have the newest and brightest iPhone? Yeah. Okay. I do not. I have an iPhone 10 and I'm waiting for, iPhone 15 so I can afford it. But that's the things that we have to look at. So that's what we're proposing there. We're looking at, efficiency measures for K through 2. Keep in mind, we provide devices for our little ones.
Yeah.
And we know screen time's an issue and we think about all of that. But these are tools that our teachers use for instruction. Safety. We're cutting school crossing guards and we're going to backfill them with school security officers is our proposal. That reduces it by 105,000. We're also not buying an additional evolved weapons detection. Now, I think everybody knows here I am not a fan of these devices. However, we do use them and we use them well. We're not reducing our safety posture. Let me be clear. We are keeping a layered approach, but this is an extra that we have to remove from the budget request. There was a question about 4-day work week. Let me be clear. January the 20th, City Council voted to reduce our funding. We haven't had enough time to investigate 4-day work week, but what I can tell you is we took a chance at looking at it from an operational perspective. As an example, this would probably be better for us in a year or two to really have time to vet it. But right now, if you wanted to save money from a utility perspective, one, we'd need all of our solar panels to come online. That would help tremendously. However, to do this now, you would have to do set points in the winter at 60 degrees on the day we would be out to realize any savings. Keep in mind, our schools are used every day. Our community uses them, rec basketball uses them, and that all costs. And we clean up after that in our agreement with the city for those activities, but we would have to limit the access on the day we chose to be the 4th day. And if we did that and we put in the summertime, we had set the set point at 85 degrees, we might realize $500,000 in savings. For transportation, we would have to be considered of the contract that we have with Zoom. For food service, while they have their own budget, but we would lose over 500,000 meals on that one day. And that would be a net loss of approximately $206, while expenditures would go down and revenues would go down also. And that's why it would be a net loss of $206,000. So we would request more time to look at this one as a cost-saving measure.
And before we get to the 3-year-old, I'll just chime in here also to talk about the fact that, again, thank you, Mr. Perkins, for that.
Add one more thing.
Just for beyond the operational kinds of considerations when it comes to a 4-day week, we do need to keep in mind the needs of our students, right? And so particularly students who depend on school for structure, for meals, for services, for safe supervision and those kinds of things, the impact on our employee contracts, excuse me, the work hours, compensation and such, the instructional implications of lengthening school days to meet required hours. So all of those things, again, we need to take into consideration families who need childcare. So again, as Mr. Perkins said, it's probably, operationally kind of feasible perhaps, but we need more time, I think, to explore that. And perhaps in subsequent years, we may be able to look at that a little bit more. But in the short amount of time that we've had from January 20th until now, you can see we have given this a shot. We've taken a look at it. But it doesn't seem to be a practical solution for this upcoming school year because it's just such a short amount of time for us to look at all of the various implications. So, and you had another point, Mr.
Yeah, and so there was a couple other questions from an operational perspective about the programming involving Play-Doh at Highland Park and Fairview. Right now, there's 148 students in the Play-Doh program at those 2 schools. I wanted to address it from a transportation and a building capacity position. First, the proposed elimination of Plato would allow us to take the dedicated 10 buses and the combined cannibalized routes to the equivalent of 2 buses for a total of 12 buses. It would allow us to use that to realize the full elimination of individual point-to-point service, which would be non-buses right now that we use to transport children with disabilities who have indication or individual education plans or McKinney-Vento students. We are mandated to do that. And unlike Plato, which is not mandated, we have to perform that. So to realize a $650,000 proposed reduction for that, we need the $257,000 it takes to run those 12 buses, plus the equivalent of 12 minibuses or 2 full buses for the VPI 3 preschool buses to accomplish that. So it's very interrelated when it comes to transportation. I know you hear a lot about transportation, but transportation is, again, a privilege that we provide for general education students, but it is mandated for the students that I'm talking about. And so we need the buses to realize that $650,000. And yes, on a standalone perspective, it's $43,000 for the buses for VPI 3 that we've cannibalized and used, and it's $257,000 for the 12 buses that we look at for Plato. And we want to keep our Plato program. We don't want to propose that, but that is the reason why it's realizing the larger savings is important. From a building capacity or functional capacity for our buildings, we have projected the proposed elimination of Plato. Those 148 students going back to their home schools. It will impact 3 schools above their functional capacity. Those schools are Crystal Spring, Grandin Court, and Wasena. We would have to go through a reallocation exercise, which would be possible, and it is feasible. We would be able to accommodate those students at their home school, even with the over the functional capacity. But keep in mind that those 3 schools have always been on the list. If you go back in presentations about the boundary study, while we haven't factored in how that will work for us, because remember, we phased that out over 3 to 5 years. We said we need to address Crystal Spring already. We needed to address Highland. This would help. This would fix Highland, frankly. And then we would have to address Grandin Court and Wasena. That's all part of phase 3 of that process. We would have to look at the reallocation of space in those schools. We would have to consider our specials and how we use the classrooms that are assigned to specials now, like art and music, to provide their classroom space. And then we'd have to work through HR under the staffing and the principals to realize that. So while there is an impact, we do believe that through the reallocation of space that we could meet that situation where those students are back at their home school.
And we're going to talk in more detail about Plato and about the VPI 3 and the teaching and learning aspects. But before we go into teaching and learning, I do want to ask the board if you have any questions about the operational considerations that Mr. Perkins laid out.
Anyone on this side? At this time? Anyone on this side? Okay, because we will talk about those 2 particular
We will.
programs later.
We're going to get right into those right now. So I'll turn to Mr. Freeman and Dr. Williams to start us off with the teaching and learning aspects of it. We'll start with VPI.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, board members, student representatives, and Dr. White. We want to thank you for the opportunity to share more information about our VPI 3 program. We appreciate your questions. And I just want to start by reiterating what Mr. Perkins said. These are proposals that we don't want to make. We value early intervention. We know the sooner we can get students in school, getting them ready for kindergarten, and then preparing them to be reading at or above grade level in 3rd grade, we know what research tells us. They graduate on time. So these are proposals that we don't want to make, but due to the budget constraints, we have to do that. So if we can kind of look at our current program, we have 23 VPI 4 classrooms. We have 9 VPI 3 classrooms. And remember, our proposal is to decrease that from 9 to 3. And we also have 9 self-contained classrooms and 1 hearing impaired classroom. So you might ask, how do we serve our 3-year-olds, our preschool 3-year-olds? So we have different service models through IDEA. We have what we call combo classes. That's the reduction that we're proposing. That's where we have gen ed and special ed students together. We have itinerant service where we have a teacher traveling. We have co-teaching classrooms. We have homebound and self-contained. So even though we're proposing to reduce our combo classes, we do serve our 3-year-olds that require special services. So you might ask, what's going to happen for next year? We have proposed 3 classrooms, but we may need more. We're going through the screening process and enrollment right now. So that will help us determine exactly how many VPI 3 classrooms we will need. And one of the questions talked about community partners. Can we reach out to our community to help us with our 3-year-olds? And the answer is yes. To apply for VPI programming, our parents fill out a Smart to Start application, and that application is connected to 21 community partners. So it is a coordinated enrollment process. So that is some positive news. So hopefully if students or 3-year-olds can't receive services through our VPI program, they can participate in one of our other community programs. And also, I just want you to know too that our division reaches out to our preschool programs, our private programs, the TAP Head Start, to provide curriculum materials and professional development opportunities. So we really do try to partner to serve our early learners because we know how important it is. And I just want to give a shout out to our VPI 3 teachers because they took time to meet with us last week. And we wanted to hear them. We wanted to get their feedback. And, they said, if you could just come to our classroom and see the growth that our kids are making. And it's so special. And I was just blessed to be in a preschool 3 classroom last week. And it's wonderful. And we want all of our kids to have that experience. So these do pull at your heartstrings because it's about kids. And so we have proposed reducing our VPI program from 9 classrooms to 3.
My 24-year-old participated in that 3-year-old program, and he would be in, I don't know where he would be, but that program turned his learning abilities completely around. He thrived in school because of that 3-year-old program.
Everything good starts early. That's right. I'm a little biased as an early childhood educator, but it all starts. Thank you, Dr. Williams. And curriculum?
Okay. So we received questions about curriculum, about do we need certain types of curriculum? Is there things that we can eliminate? And I just wanted to revisit what we've gone through the last couple of years, especially with the Virginia Literacy Act. There are certain laws that require us to adopt curriculum. We know that we had Wit and Wisdom, which was not on the state list, so we went through adoption process. And so we have new curriculum based on the state list. So we do have specific programs that we have to implement and provide for our students. Also, there is a House Bill 2777 that is gone into effect, and that requires local school boards to adopt and implement curriculum for the 4 core areas. So now we're going through adoption processes, and I have put a paper at your desk, and it kind of shows our current math curriculum adoption process. We do want voices from our teachers. Actually, last Friday, we had a PD day. We invited all of our elementary teachers to Patrick Henry. We had a math fair where they could talk with vendors and they could see the materials because we want input from teachers and principals and community members. So there is a process. I just wanted you to kind of see that. We make sure that we follow the state guidelines and that we use high quality instructional materials. And I know that we talk a lot about Hampton City, about the toolkit and the resources. That their curriculum has been submitted to the state as an HQIM also. We're waiting on approval for that. So we make sure that our students have access to the best materials.
So and I'll just start there because again, when others are providing feedback and they've asked us, they've asked us to look at curriculum. You've received some of those comments as well. Well, suppose we don't use this curriculum, suppose we use another. As you can see from the process, it's not as easy as just removing one and then adopting another. We have a process for a reason to make sure that one, it's aligned with the high quality instructional materials requirements that we have to meet by the state. Two, there's professional development and learning that goes into that. Three, there's organizational change and change management. We have to allow our teachers time. And again, we want to use resources that are approved and aligned. Remember, we were going through this push and pull, even with Wit and Wisdom, if you recall that. So we had to discontinue that. We needed to change over. And we have to be sensitive to the amount of change that we're throwing at our teachers when it comes to adopting a new curriculum, learning that, and then implementing the curriculum as well. So I just want us to be sensitive to that. It's not as easy as just getting rid of one and adopting another. It needs to be thoughtful as we look at how we're meeting standards today. So sorry, Dr. Bowers. I just wanted to jump in.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the example of the sheet that you have at your desk. Also, there was a question about testing. And at your seat, you have our testing calendar for our division. There's one page is for elementary, one page is for secondary. And a majority, almost all of these assessments are required by the state. We have some flexibility with benchmarks and snapshots, but all the assessments that you see are required for our programming. We have proposed pulling back on our MAP assessments. MAP stands for Measures of Academic Progress, and it's a nationally normed assessment, and it measures growth and academic achievement. What's beneficial about MAP and why we've loved having it is because it shows growth over time. So if I'm a parent and I get my child's report, I can see over 2, 3, 4 years the growth that my child's made. So we receive reports. Also, because it's nationally normed, we're compared to students across the nation. And it projects proficiency. So it helps us throughout the year project whether our students are ready to pass our SOL test at the end of the year. So there's so many benefits to MAP, but going through a budget crisis, you have to look at your options. So the state requires us to have a growth assessment. And part of that process, we have alternatives, and we have 3 other no-cost ways to replace MAP. We have the Virginia Growth Assessments, which we're not recommending using because it's really intensive. It triples our testing windows. There's lots of test security protocols. The other option we have to meet state requirements is using CIP benchmarks, which have been submitted to the state and approved, and we currently use those in all subjects except for reading. And then we have our reading benchmarks, which we will submit for approval from the state. So currently we use CIP and our benchmarks. So that's a no-cost way to replace MAP, but just remember when we pull MAP back, then we don't have that projected proficiency. We don't have that robust norm reference test.
Can I ask a question about, and right now, we don't have to do the Virginia growth assessments because of current legislation at the state level, because they have waived it right now, right? And it was only just recently waived, like about a year ago, which is why we were able to take away the Virginia growth assessments and choose that or MAP.
Right.
And something else of note, I just want people to understand too about MAP, like it's important that it is predictive for us with our SOLs, because if you're compared against the national norms, but we're graded, we're evaluated as a division or whatever on our, performance on the Virginia SOLs. If it wasn't really helping our instructors know how we were doing towards Virginia standards, then it wouldn't be helpful, but it is. And I remember that for all the years that I've been on the board, So, but it does cost us. I don't recall the dollar amount, so.
MEP is a pretty reliable measure when it comes to the predictive analysis. So there are different kinds of assessments. There are periodic assessments, and then there are predictive assessments as well. The periodic assessments being kind of your benchmarks, and then your predictive assessments like MAP gives us an idea of how students might perform on SOLs, right? So it helps us to kind of forecast where, how students might perform. It's also normed so that parents can see, just like when you have a baby and you take your baby to the pediatrician and they tell you your percentile of, where your child ranks in terms of height and weight for the baby. And so then you're able to norm that. Well, the same thing is true for a norm referenced assessment like MAP and versus criterion reference, which is really more of did they master the content, right? It's more did they meet that criteria? Both are essential, right? It's important for us to know if kids are mastering the content, and it's important for us to know how they rank, where they stand, and how they're performing in terms of, that's helpful for me as a teacher to know if students are on track in order to meet those standards that they'll be tested on for SOLs. But again, in these tough times, we have to make tough decisions, and this is one of them.
Question.
Sure.
I thought I saw you say about 80,000, is that right, per year? Wouldn't we, in these tough times with budgeting and with larger class sizes and, and the stress and impact to our students, wouldn't we want to keep this type of assessment? Wouldn't it be critical for us to see if we're backsliding?
We believe it's critical, however.
We have to have a way to assess what the damage is, right?
We're
That one teacher.
Excuse me?
But I think we're in a situation where the MAP tests are one teacher.
Yeah, the dollar amount.
So for all of the options that we're considering and we're presenting for your consideration tonight, again, we can keep certain things, we can look at other kinds of things, but the money will need to come from somewhere. And typically, it's going to come from personnel, right? Or we could look at another program, but that is the situation that we're faced with today, that if we don't do this cut, and we may not, as a school board, we may, you might decide that this is not the area that we can cut. But then that 80,000, for instance, would have to come from someplace else.
Understood.
So, and that's the reason why we're presenting some scenarios before you this evening to give you a full picture of where we are.
Would we would have to use the Virginia growth assessments if we didn't use MAP, correct?
No, we have the waiver for CIP benchmarks have been approved
Okay.
in the.
So we
for
could
that requirement.
just do CIP benchmarks or just do RCPS benchmarks? Or
Yes.
just do MAP or
Mhm.
just do Virginia growth assessments? Okay.
Is there a specific one that you guys recommend?
MAP.
I'm gonna say, is there another thing close to MOP, but that it doesn't cost?
Second best.
Second best? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
What is the least worst option?
that part.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to say because two different tests.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And we want a full picture of a child. So it's, a child's not one data point, it's lots. So it's the full picture. So
I think that our teachers would say that while they find value in a MAP assessment, I do think that our teachers are looking for ways to regain more instructional time.
Yeah.
And so it's a trade-off, of course, not having that data, it could be problematic, but at the same time, the potential benefit would be having more teaching time back. So yes, we could absolutely use the CIP benchmarks as well as our own, those are the periodic assessments. That's not going to forecast out what we are used to, but those are those are the options before us right now.
And I do want to just throw in as a parent, so, at progress report time or at parent-teacher conferences, you probably saw a map test, I personally like looking at the growth because if you have, you want to measure both, but if you have, say, a very high performing student or say a very maybe low performing student, but you're measuring like that growth is also so important. That's something you don't get from the benchmarks, but at any point, because they're looking at the state level at redoing all assessments if they ever can, I think it's like a 3-year process, but all of this could change and they could require Virginia growth assessments and something else and something else. But yes, instructional time is always paramount.
I just want to add that considering that it's a high probability that the classes are going to be larger, then we definitely need the extra teach instructional time.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Williams. I'd like to switch gears right now and talk about the gifted and talented services that we provide, including Play-Doh. And for that, I'll ask Mr. Freeman if he'll take us through our elementary and middle and high school programming for gifted and talented.
Thank you, Dr. White. Good evening to the board. Once again, I'm going to wait for the PowerPoint to come up. Oh, there we go. Thank you. I will just tell you, I will be longer than Dominic, but I will try not to be as long as Chris Perkins. Chris did set the platform for me to finish up and the foundation for Play-Doh on tonight. But I do want to remind the public and those that may be viewing and those that are here in person about gifted and talented services that we have K through 12. Because I know when we hear Play-Doh, that's the only thing we think of as gifted, but we have other services too. So our K through 2 program, we have gifted resource teachers that work with collaboratively with our classroom teachers to ensure that they have pull-out services and classroom differentiation through grouping and acceleration strategies. And we'll talk a little bit more about differentiation later because we know that were some of the questions that we did receive about and hear throughout our communication with the Play-Doh teachers. Grades 3 through 5, we have our Play-Doh program, which they identified with 2 locations as stated by Mr. Perkins earlier at Fairview Elementary School and Highland Park Elementary School, with the teachers are providing more in-depth learning inside of a classroom with the gifted students aligned with the Virginia Standards of Learning. Then we have our middle and high school students that are part of the Reach Out and the Rise Up initiative, where we have our middle and high school students that are in higher level accomplishment classes that could be in academic advanced courses through 6th through 8th grade that demonstrate high academic ability, and they go through an application process, could be English and math. So they have an opportunity to be in accelerated classes. Students have both been identified in both intellectual and specific academic aptitude and monitored. One of our gifted resource teachers do monitor our students at the middle school level also. And then our high school programs, of course, we have advanced placement and dual enrollment classes. And those are not only located at our traditional high schools, we have an opportunity for that through our day tech and road tech courses. So we are able to utilize those through our engineering program also. So they're dual enrollment and advanced placement courses. So we do have a comprehensive K through 12 plan. But I know that a lot of the questions and the feedback we received, that you received, dealt with Play-Doh. And we did have an opportunity to speak with the Play-Doh teachers on what's today? Yesterday. And my days are running close together. So we did have an opportunity to hear from them and to get their input, talk to them about different things they would like to see, and had a lot of questions and concerns. One of the questions that come up is, well, if Play-Doh is phased out, if Play-Doh does not exist, how we still meet the needs of the students that are there. We have our gifted resource teachers that will still meet the needs of those students. Yes, there will be sometimes you have to have some pull-out service, but most importantly, there should be differentiation in the classroom as part of effective Tier 1 instruction. So therefore, we're meeting the needs of each student, as we say by name, need, and strength. Therefore, we're going to address it in the classroom with activities, enrichment activities, as well as remediation activities or intervention strategies. They need to be in place. And you will see an example here from our Hampton City curriculum. from Dr. Williams and her team, that you will see that there's an intervention for one of the activities dealing with science, and also a reflection in art and science, or the combination of enrichment to actually have a critical thinking piece for the students in order to advance them a little bit further through their thinking, and you can see where it takes to the objectives of what they should accomplish. So those things are embedded if we're truly looking at differentiated instruction in the classroom. Before I go on a little bit further, because I want to talk about and present to you tonight options based off the information that we heard, Ms. Jackson is going to share a little bit of information before we go there so you understand why we get to the cost and where we're at based off the salary of a teacher at about $95,500 per teacher. But she's going to have some additional information.
Right. So, I mean, you can go ahead and go to the next slide if you would. So it's kind of, I just asked if I could interject here because we've had some questions on the numbers that we've looked at related to savings from reducing Play-Doh. So I just wanted to take a second to try to add a little bit of clarity there. So when we very first presented this, we were looking at basically the equivalent of a reduction of 2 teachers, and on a separate slide, we looked at the savings from school bus, those school buses being available to offset the external vendor individualized transportation that we've had to add over the years. So as Mr. Perkins did a good job explaining earlier, all of that is tied together. So last meeting, I was summarizing what had been shared at the previous meeting, and I grouped some items together, and I grouped those 2 items together, which I think caused some consternation for some members of the public who said, hey, how did my Play-Doh cost go from $160,000 to over $800,000? Well, I summarized a lot of things on that slide, not just that one, but I know that stood out. So I wanted to explain that wasn't just positions, that was also bringing in the transportation. So now here you're about to be walked through some other numbers. And so this is really looking at the Play-Doh program as a standalone. So as Mr. Perkins explained earlier, this does include some transportation costs, just if that was a standalone program. But I think it's important to keep in mind that if we retain Play-Doh in its current form, we are not able to realize the savings from those outside vendors providing that individualized transportation, because we wouldn't have the buses to offset that, if that makes sense. So, so this is just another way to look at that, which is relevant to the options that Mr. Freeman is going to walk through. So can I pause there and if there's any further clarification
Right, before we get into the
that
table
might be
here, but
needed?
are there any questions about how the cost
The
went
different
from
numbers, yeah.
the difference in how it was?
Trying to show it a few different ways, which I'm sorry added to some confusion.
So if I say it this way, do I have it? Let me try it this way. The numbers we saw before were somewhat parsed between program and transportation.
Yes.
The reality is that some of the savings we're talking about only are realized if all of the transportation options are selected as they have been presented, which is the difficulty in isolating the cost of Play-Doh. But what we are looking at now, if I'm following this correctly, is as close an estimation as we can get of what the Play-Doh program costs as a budgetary item. But and this is where I'm confused, where it says any transportation at all, we are no longer getting the savings that we would get elsewhere. The synergistic savings go away. So there's a more cost somewhere else also. Okay, so Play-Doh may only cost $1.1 million as option A, but that also means we've just seen a budget uptick of costs somewhere else in transportation.
Okay.
Correct.
Option B, D, and F may stay about where we see them.
Yes.
And the other line items of costs will also stay about where we see them.
Yes, and with the sort of the caveat of some of the options, which we'll walk through in a minute, would be like a phase out, so we'd be reducing. So I think, maybe and step in if I'm misspeaking, but the level of savings that we could see, I think our estimate in the budget right now is about a savings about $650,000. I think we would still have savings. It just might be a smaller number than that. Is that fair? Okay. Okay.
And, sorry.
I was also gonna note, so my understanding also from these numbers is you were presenting the previous number of $160,000 in savings by eliminating Plato is because you still have students that still have a ratio of a student to teacher ratio, but that ratio is a little bit we pay for a few more extra teachers because of the split at Plato. So like, it still costs to teach all these classes of kids. It just costs 160,000 more in like teachers because the classes
And
maybe are a
program
little.
and stuff.
So
Right, so like that cost is the cost that we would be paying for all of those kids to be taught somewhere at some school, kind of pretty much. So that's why that's like 1.1 million or whatnot, because you still have a cost to teach the kids at Plato. It doesn't go away because they're at their
Right.
homeschool. They're still a student in a student to teacher ratio. You get a savings of 160 on the programming and personnel side. If
Right,
you
that would
don't
sort of
go
be
to
the
Plato
minimum
classes.
reduction. If we repurpose the remaining teachers, that would be kind of the bare minimum of savings of a couple of positions. And versus this is showing the whole program kind of as as Dr. Jameson very well articulated, kind of the best we could to sort of carve out what is this program as a standalone, really kind of costing.
Got it.
I think we have to add earlier when I said 95.5 is the base salary with benefits for one teacher, then adding your transportation, what Mr. Perkins mentioned earlier, about 257,000. So when you're looking, and I know Mr. Link, you have a question, but I know you already looked at the chart. One thing we probably should have done, as a good teacher would probably do, is not put the chart up until after we have explained the chart. So that way, I caught that afterwards when you told me to put the chart up. Yeah, I know. But you went straight there to answer, but you pretty much set up everything, making it easy to explain exactly what we're looking at. When we're looking at third, fourth, and fifth grade, we're just looking at the Plato program itself. So if you look at the first column as option A and option B, I try to use that as the comparison because basically is option A is as it is right now, where we're at with 2 locations with all 9 teachers that are teaching 140, was it 8 students? And so then when you look at option B, it's leaving it still in the same locations, but the only thing different is you're providing your own transportation, which we know we want to provide the transportation because now we have equity issues. Some students are not able to do that. So I want to make sure I make that clear on tonight. When you look at option C and D, you will see that it's phasing out. So because it's one of the options that people put in writing, they wanted us to take a look at. If you could to look at that, please look at phasing out the program, if that was a possibility or not. So if we look at that as a possibility, you're phasing out third grade. That means next year it won't be no students attending third grade program. So you only have 6 teachers now. Again, 2 locations, you have the transportation and you have the no-cost transportation. There's 6 teachers. There you see the cost difference. When you get to E and F, you're looking at 1 location. 1 site that was also mentioned in some of the information that we received. So if we look at 1 location, and no, we haven't decided the location, we're just making it as one of the things that was offered up to us. We look at 1 location and you got 4 teachers because now we're looking at collapsing some of those classes because of the class numbers of the 148 students that we believe we can get them down to 4 teachers. Therefore, you're looking at the cost for transportation and no transportation. So again, as we said earlier, we always want to provide the transportation because of equity issues. But then we have to talk about G, no program at all. It's the best cost savings. But as Ms. Jackson already stated earlier, if we don't go with the option G and whatever option we go with, that means we have to look at cost savings somewhere else in our presentations.
Well, but to be fair with what Dr. Jameson had said on option G, those 9 classes worth of students are going somewhere and we will have to pay the teachers that would teach those 148 students. So that, like a personnel cost, like somewhere else will go up where it went down for the Plato program. So you will.
No.
So what does
No, no.
that in their home state? Because we're going to larger class sizes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The personnel shrinkage.
They already
They
have
possibly go to
teachers
other
there.
teaching
Yes,
positions.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, we're gonna hope they'll be somewhere else.
Yes.
But they will be guaranteed to be pulled out for the gifted program.
There will be some students that'll be pulled out for gifted resource. We still have to keep at least 5 teachers, 4 for elementary. We're looking at the numbers, and 1 for middle school in order to address the needs.
So again, we've received lots of feedback here and questions, not only from the school board, but also from the public about, well, what about this? What if we have 2 locations versus 1? What if we have transportation versus no transportation? What we're trying to, again, do our due diligence is to show you the various options here. And as Mr. Freeman said, that anything with the exception of option G means that, again, we can do it. We just have to make sure that we're finding those funds elsewhere in the budget. So again, lots of options here, but we wanted to just kind of tease it out to see what we could possibly do.
I'm sorry. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. What we saw in the last meeting, what you suggested were potential savings. And what we're looking at here are costs. Those are 2 different numbers. And if we eliminate, sorry, that was me. If we eliminate Plato as is, there is a savings of $160,000 from the instructional part. No,
At a minimum.
at a minimum,
At a minimum, depending on.
to provide the differentiation in the mechanism that we're currently doing it. But then there is also this additional transportation cost of, what was the number?
650,000.
650,000. And so if we do option B, which is up here, what we're looking at right here are costs. If we were to pursue option B, we would see a savings of $650,000 because no transportation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It would enable the other savings that we are considering in the outsourced kind of individualized transportation that we've had to make use of thus far.
Okay. So, and I know there are lots of equity questions and things that we don't want to be looking at, but the cost of the transportation is $650,000. The cost of providing the differentiation as we're currently doing it is 100. So because I mean, what's getting me is if we eliminate the program altogether, option G really isn't 0 because we still have to educate these children. And so there is, that doesn't go to 0. I can't do my math super fast, but it goes to like $700,000, right? Option G is still $700,000 because we realized the 160,000 savings if we, anyone following me?
You're saying in option A, it costs 160 plus 650 more than if you didn't have those 2, if they were in regular.
Right.
ed.
So if option B already takes out the transportation, if option B is already the cost of taking out just the transportation, then if we take out the differentiation of 160, if I've got that right, and I know there's,
And transporting them to the.
right, if we transfer the burden of transportation to the parents, then we still have a cost of 700,000 of educating these children. So it's not like if I'm sorry, I'll shut up now.
No, I mean, you're kind of honing in very well on the complexity of how there's several moving parts.
Sure.
So, that's part of the decision of, how would we attack this issue if we make the change? Would that look like adding gifted resource teachers, or would that look like adding classroom teachers, or, or would we need to add classroom teachers depending on kind of how that the enrollment shakes out, that kind of thing. So we do have several different options, which that kind of breakout slide does make an effort at least to show kind of the impacts and the changes of those costs if we were to kind of do some kind of middle of the road option of phase out and that kind of thing. But you're right that the sort of the bare minimum savings that we first looked at was about $160,000 related to personnel, depending on enrollments and that sort of thing. I think we did see through that last slide that there would be the potential ability to reduce staffing further, depending on the enrollment at the given schools where we would end up. Like one of the examples that I think it's important to note, if we were to go with an option of going from two sites to one, that would reduce the classes. That would increase class sizes to some extent, but based on the current enrollments, that looks feasible. So that's another factor to consider as a possibility.
Um, I did want to inquire if, you know, well, I probably know the answer, but if there may just not have been time yet, but this may all be a moot conversation if the as far as the phase out model goes regarding transportation costs. If parents who are currently parents of students in Plato, if 95% of them would opt out of Plato if they no longer had transportation, then this is a moot point. The parents will already have chosen for us, and we say the gifted services go back to their home schools, whereas if 95% say we would opt into Plato without transportation, this is also feels like a moot conversation because the parents have chosen, they will bear the burden of the transportation. If it's 50-50, then we talk more about like, the equity issues and how do we meet those needs and things like that. But I feel like on those two ends of the spectrum, it would make my decision on behalf of the entire division on this particular line item a lot easier, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We may be
Yeah.
arguing about something that we might not have to be arguing about or like going through, because I do think one of the things that I just want to point out with respect to this, and I in full disclaimer, I am the parent of 2 kids who have gone through Plato, one who is actively in one of these lists right now.
Mhm.
So, this, like it has been pointed out by a number of people who have contributed, that there's appropriate instruction for a lot of these students. And we've, parents have lived through, like, and I was a teacher too, I understand appropriate differentiation and things like that. But I really do believe that we and our CPS are trying to meet the needs of all of our students, and don't want to see the lights go out on a number of students because they're not getting the appropriate instruction that they need on any level of the educational spectrum. So
Ask for one additional clarification question on the slide that talked about elementary school differentiation, the K through 2 and then the 3 through 5. We just have Plato up there. I am
had a question.
assuming differentiation is actually still happening at those home schools. I think it's important to remember, and I say this as someone who was a parent of one child who did go to Plato and one who did not. Both of them quite successful.
Is
They-
this wood, Dr.
They
I'm not giving her the map.
And I know at the time, the child who did not go did receive substantial support, in part because she just had a May birthday, right? I mean, there's a lot happening for those little bodies at those ages. And so one of the things I think we're not talking about with all of and listen, my heart goes out to all the letters received about Plato, brings back lots of memories for me as a parent of somebody who just turned 30 last week. So I remember, and it mattered, but I also remember the success of my other child, who also learned she was smart at her homeschool and who also mattered to some teachers. And if that matters to me. So hearing more, so I don't want to think that just because on this slide, we only see Plato on 3 through 5, that's the only thing happening in our schools for those differentiated learners. And granted, it's a wonder, I'm going to say it for the 47th time tonight. We've heard it. Nobody wants to do this.
Right.
Nobody wants
Mhm.
to do this. But I also want to speak to what I think your point is too, is that we do look for the differentiated learning.
And to piggyback off of what Dr. Jameson is saying, my youngest was in the gifted program at his elementary school, and they offered for him to go to Plato. And one of his things were he didn't want to leave where he was because he did feel grounded. And unfortunately, every kid doesn't feel that way because we heard the children last month and they need that. So I understand that need. But as Dr. Jameson is saying, he tested highest in every grade level all through elementary school. He's been advanced SOL testing since, but he did get that nurturing through getting pulled out for gifted. So it does work and it is a good option. And only because I'm saying if we have to make this decision again, we don't want to, because listening to those children last month was gut wrenching to me. And I tried to hold back every tear as I looked to the left and saw everyone else pouring, and it just dropped on me. But I do want the public to understand if we have to make that decision, they will be successful. We have one of the strongest school districts in the area, and we have a lot of them that are going to Division I, Division II schools, Division III schools because of choice of the matter. We have a lot of children going to college out of Roanoke City Public Schools, and that's definitely something to be proud of. So if we do have to make this change, we do have great teachers at their home schools that can get them on, keep them up to par and nurture them and love them just as those Plato teachers are. But again, I hate to see that we have to make any of the cuts that we're facing right now because it's so undeserving. And even though we say we're in the people business, we're in the little people business. And that is our future. And we have to invest in our future. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Dr. White, let me just make a statement before we move on, and thank you, Dr. Jameson, for mentioning that. We have 15 teachers that are in the gifted and talented. 9 of those teachers are just Plato. That's what you're seeing on the chart. So we do have the other 5 that work at the elementary schools through the K through 2 pullouts, and then we have the one that's assigned to middle school. I just want to make sure I make that clarity so we all understood that.
And can I just add too that, I know we talked about K through 2, but also the 3 through 5 children that decided not to be in the program, they still receive services at their home school. So it's really, K-5 support. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Any other additional questions about Plato? I do want to address kind of the transportation opt-out piece because we've seen that and we saw some questions about that, about parents who might choose to opt out of transportation, not just for Plato, but there were questions about whether or not parents could opt out of transportation, generally speaking, and would that be a cost savings for the division? And I would say that that's also very complicated in that we get requests for route changes every day. And so if for instance, not necessarily with Plato, but in a general sense, if a parent decides it lives within the zone for transportation, tells us that they're opting out, but then changes their mind because of, could be custody issues, could be childcare or whatever, we would still feel obligated to provide that transportation. So it's a moving target. Mr. Perkins, I know you had a number for me about how many changes we've realized in transportation just recently. Hate to put you on the spot like that.
No problem. As an example, we've had just year to date for students with disability transportation that have IEP requiring transportation, 523 changes since the beginning of school. And that's just one category that we have about 2,700 students that would fall into that category. And we've had 523 changes. Say it again.
Back there, he's done them all.
Yeah, Mr. Dowdy. Mr. Dowdy's back there.
That's Walt. Walt does that. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. I thought you were saying, are you looking at the wall? And I'm like, no.
How many
It
weeks?
probably are.
How many weeks of instruction have we had this year?
4,768.
I mean, it's you're doing, there's 52 weeks in a year. We're what, halfway through? So you're doing 20 of these a week.
Yes.
I'm not Mr.
Well,
Dog.
yeah.
And I can tell you, his blood
Christine's
pressure
cat.
medicine and mine are about the same, what we take, so.
And then just on the, again, I won't kind of pontificate on the gifted and talented piece, but as a parent of students who were in the gifted and talented program many moons ago, I can, empathize with parents who, again, you want to make sure that your students are seen, right? And that that their talents are nurtured and that their teachers understand. I don't know, my kids were a little quirky. And so that you want to make sure that, that teachers understand how to address not only those academic needs, but sometimes the other kinds of nuances that come with gifted learners. I believe that we do have teachers who understand that and who can meet that need. But I do want to speak on behalf of teachers as well. As a teacher, I do think that our teachers would require some additional professional learning and training if they haven't had experience with meeting that that range of academic stretch when it comes to how to differentiate instruction to that degree. So again, we understand all aspects of it and are looking to address it in various ways. So, Mr. Freeman, was there anything else on your slides or anything else from your, okay.
We're moving forward now with block scheduling.
Oh, that's right. How could I forget? Let me go through my PowerPoint. Yes,
Let me
indeed.
get there. Okay. So another cost savings, we will be restructuring our middle school. As you know, we have 5 middle schools. 2 of our middle schools are already on a block schedule that we started 2 years ago as a pilot in regards to responding to some concerns and federal identification, which we have seen success not only through a few things we're going to talk about in just a moment. We've seen success because one of our schools is completely out of CSI, which they've been in for 3 years. So we know this has proven to be successful for our students. So we're going to bring it to make it common across all middle schools. We're moving to having all 5 middle schools on a block schedule, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, with a preliminary estimated cost savings of $2 million. Before I go on any further, I want to stop and pause now and say thank you to Dr. Wimbush and Dr. Poland, who is in the back, who has actually worked with our principals and our counselors to look at this cost savings and look at it very efficiently with the principals and the counselors as we're moving forward. There's some things we have to do immediately. So in making this change, you'll see there's a copy of a schedule of what the block schedule will look like based off the time schedules that we have now. So in doing so, this will offer an additional option of a 0 period for more elective opportunities for students. This is a division-wide benefit for the same structure and expectations, especially when we have students that are moving from school to school, so now we're all on the same schedule. So you'll see there the time frames was 5 blocks within the day. Of course, the 3rd block is extended as a 25-minute lunch there. Right now, we are on that 7-period day, Some of them are on a different period day, which we're looking at 60 minutes. Right now, we're going to increase it to 75. So that's one of the benefits. We have more instructional minutes that will be within the block that we can address not only just regular differentiated instruction, but also anything we need to do with intervention and remediation and tutoring, we can group it so it's all happening within the block since we'll not be able to have the additional funds for a lot of the after-school tutoring. So when we're looking at making this change, as the benefits here, as I've already stated, it provides longer instructional blocks. It supports the learning and relationships and their student engagement. You'll see that it has a 75 additional hours of instructional time per year, which is at 10 additional school days of learning if you look at the total. Students will benefit from fewer transitions. Of course, that helps with your school climate, your disruptions, your fights, your class transitions, because it limits the time and the movement in the hallways. Longer blocks to create more opportunity, as I stated, for enrichment and differentiation in small group. And it also aligns for transition as we move into high school, because we know we're going then from 75 to a 90-minute block at the high school level. So we're moving forward with this change in order to look at what we can offer to our students, Also looking at how we can save in our cost savings. Like I said, the preliminary cost there is $2 million.
Was that in the original projections for like, so that, this is a new, so that means
Yes.
we
We found
have.
$2 million.
yes.
That's good.
How does this save $2 million?
Yeah.
What's the what's the math behind that?
We'll be looking at staffing. Of course, when you're looking at your staffing, you'll be looking at the blocks in your schedule, what we're going to be offering, and then it's going to be a cost saving in staffing.
And with the 0 period, that would be, you'd have to opt in with your own transportation?
Yes. And there can be some flexibility, of course. I know you're probably thinking, well, that'll extend the staffing's date. No, the pretty much provides some flexibility in the staffing. If you're coming in earlier for 0 period, you're not extending the full day.
And the risk there is an equity.
It
issue as
is.
Well,
Absolutely.
Again, so again, it's something that we are constantly having to consider. What are some of the equity issues there? So that is a concern. However, when you're trying to balance the cost savings and those kinds of things, knowing the success of the block scheduling model that we've seen at the pilot schools, we believe that this is a viable option for us to bring forward to the board for your consideration.
I'll just add another area that is beneficial from a budgetary standpoint with that is at our 3 middle schools that are currently in 7 period day. That's where we see the most challenges with keeping teacher schedules to the 25 class periods a week. And so we have to pay additional if folks go over that number. And so we would anticipate that this shift would allow more flexibility there to keep teacher schedules within that requirement and cut down on the additional teaching period experience that a lot of our teachers at those other middle schools currently have. So that's one benefit as well.
And just a quick question, how many people do we share across middle schools as far as staff goes? Because I imagine that would also make it easier for sharing staff across middle schools.
I don't have the exact number right now, but we will have to share some additional. I don't know if Dr. Wimbush.
Oh. Ah.
So thank you, Mr. Freeman. And we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit here. And I'll ask Mrs. Jackson if she'll kind of wrap up this presentation for us by summarizing the financial resources and then looking at some of the decision points that are before us. So Mrs. Jackson, back to you.
Thank you. So yeah, we had a few questions that were sort of related to our overall financial resources or the context and history that have kind of brought us here. So one of those related to just sort of reminding our group and the public of positions and other costs that have been funded through grants over the years, particularly in recent years. Of course, we had such an influx of pandemic relief funding that was temporary. So you can see here the positions that we had funded through the pandemic relief or ESSER funds when we had them. And in some cases, they were positions that already existed. We got temporary relief, moving them into those grants while they were available, and then moved them back in general fund. That was chiefly class size reduction teachers that you see listed there. And then you see sort of the sort of high level big ticket items that we funded non-personnel related through those grants, all of which has moved into the general fund at this point. And then a couple of other similar situations. We had federal grant, the E3 plus federal grant that funded teacher mentors. We did retain those positions after that grant ended. And then the All in Virginia funding was a 3-year funding sort of special project that the state funded. So you can see there that we did have both student support specialists and reading specialists that we funded out of those. 4 of the student support specialists we moved into the general fund in the current year and currently have the intent in our next year budget to retain 1 student support specialist that for this last year of those all-in funds is still in those, and then the 6 reading specialists to retain those. We added those At that same time is when the SOQs changed to require reading specialists at the middle school level as well as elementary. So that's what that was related to. We did have a question about debt service and kind of how we can make best use of those funds. I know we talked about that a little bit earlier in the meeting, that at present, the city does commit 5 million of the bond sale proceeds, the bonds that they sell for capital projects every year. 5 million of that is earmarked for school projects. And you heard earlier our intended use of those funds and how that would what we would put that towards through our capital improvement plan that you'll be asked to approve next meeting. But I did want to note that kind of there are rules about what you can use government bond funds for, and they have to be for long-term capital projects. Typically, the financing life of those funds is 20 years. So as we noted earlier in the meeting, we are required to pay that back. So it's basically like a mortgage, right? And we have to budget in our operating budget for the annual costs of paying that off. So of course, we would not want to finance something with a short useful life over a 20-year borrowing. Yes, sir.
For the sake of the conversation, I mean, 5 million is not we're not building a school for $5 million.
Correct.
Mr. Perkins, could you give us an example of a project scope that would be a capital project that would have a price tag of about $5 million?
So some HVAC recondition or replacement could be that high. Large scale renovation of a building could be that. For instance, it costs us about 5 million to add the addition onto Morningside Elementary.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And I think the last kind of question that was sort of generally related to financing and funding our needs was related to donations and what can we do? We've talked about that a little bit already, of whether we can accept donations and can the community, and we're certainly very appreciative of all the ongoing support that we always get, but the particular outpouring and the questions we've received in this time of ways, asking about how can individuals and community groups help. So our schools certainly can and do receive donations and support. And I think it's important to note that donations over $1,000 are required to be officially accepted by the school board. So you note that every meeting once a month where you receive those and take formal action to accept those. It is important to remember that donations that are accepted are required to be used in the way that the donor intended. So we have to be thoughtful about that and make sure that if we are accepting donations, that they are aligned to student needs and the priorities of the school division. And just as we've noted previously, that one consideration is that you can't necessarily rely on and count on donations for ongoing expenses. So that's something to just keep in mind in terms of planning. But that certainly could go a long way, particularly as we're talking about reductions across the board and things that we might have to do a little bit less often. That might be a way where, if a community member wants to support field trips out of school or some instructional resources or something like that, that otherwise they might have to wait another year to get, those are great ways that the community can certainly help and already do, frankly. We're certainly very appreciative of all of the ways that our community supports our students and our schools already and have offered to continue to do so.
That goes into, again, the questions about the Education Foundation and how they can help. And I know that they are working with the Central Council PTA to kind of convene a meeting of kind of nonprofit partners and community organizations and supporters to explore kind of how the broader community can help. And so we're appreciative of those kinds of efforts.
We know that our business community is looking into ways that they might be able to support us. I'd love to see our church friends and our, I know that we do have some church partners that donate all the time, but I'd love to see our full community of churches participate in some way. And even, I was thinking our real estate community, they have a stake in this. Our real estate partners have a stake in this. I'd love to see the real estate community step up and offer some suggestions or some feedback.
I know Dr. Jameson wanted to say something.
Just have a quick question. I've never really thought about this. When we receive a donation, is that money that has to be appropriated in some way, or does it come into us the way the state funds come? Like when that enters, I know it's not large amounts, so we really haven't had to worry about that. But let's say we get over the course of the year, sometimes we have months where it's not insubstantial.
It depends on how it is handled. Most of the time when we have those grants, it is handled through our school activity funds, which are fiduciary funds. So they are kind of owned by the schools, and they do carry forward. So that is not you're good. That is not funding that is appropriated to us through the city. In larger quantities, you would probably see that on our grant report, which we do forward for appropriation when we get funds of that nature. So we do ask for that to be added as we get them.
So because it's in our consent agenda, and then like Ms. Watkins always reads all the things we got, and that's why it's there if it's over $1,000.
Yep.
But so let's say it was like, somebody's like, I'm going to donate $100,000 and cover the activity buses for Tuesdays.
Yep.
Right.
Then what happens? Which, we were,
Hey, just
so,
yeah.
yeah. So
Look at
then
how
would they have to,
Or could
like,
they choose that's an inflow to us, and they could choose not to reappropriate it to us?
no, well, it said they must be used in the way they were intended.
It's a donation.
that's
true.
restricted funds.
It's restricted funds, but they could not reappropriate it.
Oh, if we didn't use it in that year?
I mean,
It's-
thus far, our restricted funds, we've been told we don't have to request reappropriation of like multi-year grants, for example, capital funds, that sort of thing has not been required to be reappropriated annually once it is appropriated by city council.
So the donations that we get, once we like accept them in the consent agenda, then they are going to council to get appropriated?
Not from the donation report.
Oh, okay.
So I would say if it's something that we need to appropriate like that it's not going into school activity funds to be managed in that way, we would submit it as an appropriation request, like we do with grants. I mean, I know if it's an individual donation, it's not necessarily a grant, but we would probably treat it that way. If we got that $100,000 donation, for example, we would definitely request appropriation of that and account for that in our restricted fund.
Okay, so when we were in the smaller groups with Mr. Freeman, we had, I guess, a parent state, why do you guys not open a GoFundMe? And we were like, we can't. Is that correct? Like, and if, let's say somebody had that idea, can they?
It's my understanding that school divisions aren't allowed to fundraise. We are allowed to
Exactly.
accept donations, but
Okay.
that's a different matter of us opening a fundraiser. That may certainly be something that like the Education Foundation could do on our behalf.
Or churches or like Booster Club or
Great.
those things can fundraise and then they could donate it. Yeah.
I mean, I get it, but it's still, that's for ongoing costs.
Yes.
That's
Right.
Yeah.
even sustainable.
Right.
Yeah. Are students allowed to fundraise, or is that like restricted?
Students are allowed to do fundraisers. I mean, we do have processes in place for student groups to let the school administration know what they're intending to do. So we do have an approval process just to make sure that we know what's going on and that we have appropriate processes for that fundraiser. But that is allowed, yes.
Don's gonna save us.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Um, do we have any other questions here? I did want to, especially about this one in particular, because so I think one of the recurring themes, big themes through this process has been how can we help, and people want to take action, and everything from crowdsourcing or figuring out getting parents together so they can sort out carpools and ride shares to providing things. And I did note it's publicly accessible on board docs, the annual report for capital development. It lists all the smaller dollar item things that aren't like the capital maintenance items. A lot of those are like school-based. And, I've taught at schools where there was like the alumni club that would like help with the grounds, on a periodic basis, or do various other things, so there's a lot of things there's the reactive or after the fact things we can do to try to help compensate for funds we don't have, but it is, the sustainability is a thing. So I think in general, we're always looking for proactive or preventative solutions and measures. And the best answer to that is certainty in funding that supports sustainable programming that meets the needs of our students. So just making a note that that's the most sustainable way is for the community to get behind those measures as well.
Okay, so the last couple of things, we're almost to the end. Just kind of to put it in perspective and next steps. So some sort of decision points. Of course, all of it is difficult decisions and all requires a decision, but some significant levers that I just want to take a moment to raise to the top is raises. No pun intended. That is something that is obviously a big cost driver. So our decision on whether to do raises, and if so, what level, it is a big factor in what else can stay in or has to come out of the budget. I raised that also because of the timeline, as Mr. McKee laid out, of our desire to get contracts out and know for sure who is desiring to stay and who is desiring to retire or not return, because that factors into our ability to make these decisions and hopefully minimize the impact on continuing employees as we have to do cuts. So I just commend that to you for thought, as we'll need to have some clear guidance. And when we bring you a budget on the 10th, even though that is a preliminary budget, that's not the final budget, we'll want to make sure that that includes what you are comfortable with from a raise perspective, so that gives the go ahead to our HR team to move forward with contracts. So we know what that can include. So I will just raise those. Now, as Dr. White said, we wanted to provide, just to try to put it in perspective, some numbers of how these different levers and decisions affect other levers and decisions. So this is just a couple of kind of high level examples of how we could come up with that $16 million deficit. So the first example has no raises, so that cuts the deficit. It eliminates Plato, so it has kind of an estimate there. So you can see that, assuming we would do all of that and have cut everything we've discussed, basically, we would still have the potential loss of about 158 positions. And I'll note that in kind of making these estimates, we're using sort of an average cost of salary and benefits for a teacher level position. So obviously, if other positions are in the mix there, that number will change. But just to kind of give you an idea and put that in perspective. Whereas in example B, we left the raise in there. We still have eliminating all the other options that we included. So that would raise the number of positions lost to about 178. Couple other ways to look at it. If we kept the raise in there, but we phased out Plato, we did one of those kind of middle of the road options that we looked at. That would end up with a potential loss of about 182 positions, and then no raise, phasing out the Plato program. So again, that middle of the road would reduce that number of lost positions to about 161. So it just kind of to give you something to think through and kind of play with some numbers around the different impacts of some of these decisions.
Can I just clarify, the cost savings for the middle school block scheduling comes from staffing, so that's why you don't see it as a line item on here. It's rolled into the staffing.
That's correct.
Decreases. Did everybody note that? That $2 million savings for middle school is not, it's embedded in the staffing difference.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yes, that's correct. Just sort of a method for addressing that issue, but you're right. It is embedded in that.
Yeah.
So our next steps would be, of course, that the next school board meeting in 2 weeks, where we need to bring you a preliminary categorical budget and ask for your approval. And that is because in our school board policy and also the city charter, we are required to provide a budget estimate to the city on or before March 15th. We certainly would not want to provide anything that the school board cannot get behind. So that's our opportunity at that March 10th meeting to make sure that whatever preliminary budget we are providing is something that the school board can support. That's not the end of the process. That's not the final budget. At that point, we won't have final city or state revenue numbers at that point. So we certainly have the opportunity to continue making adjustments. But as I noted, particularly in areas of like raises and in order to be able to move forward with contracts, we would want to make sure, at least at that point, that we had a clear understanding of the school board's desire of how we would move forward on some of those key things like that.
And Ms. Jackson, excuse me if I may
Oh.
add, I just wanted to let you know that the City Council will be having their approval of the budget, well, the public hearing rather, on April 23rd, which would include the school's budget.
Okay, thank you. And if you couldn't hear that, April 23rd is the public hearing of the city's budget. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you for sharing that. So that's part of the process. You know, we have to meet this deadline to have our estimate provided. But, you know, just as we're continuing on our process, the city and the state are continuing theirs to finalize their budget. So that is a key step, is to have a public hearing on the city budget, which includes the portion for schools at that point, leading up to, it's typically mid-May when the city council approves their final budget. And then, of course, we would bring you the final detailed budget for your approval in June.
Right. And Madam Chair, that concludes our report.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Thank you to the entire team. I know that was a lot of work that went into that, but these are the times that the work, you know, this is the work that is required. So we appreciate you, and we appreciate the information to help arm us with the information we need to be able to make the best decisions we can moving forward. Okay, so any further questions for the team in front of us? Okay.
Thank y'all.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And thank you to all the others that helped contribute to all the information that you all put in. I know it was a complete team effort. For work of the board and ongoing business, we have our retreat that got rescheduled, so it's going to be in early April, just after spring break. And then we know that a lot of our work of the board will come into play at that time. For future business, we'll be looking at the school board student representatives, the next phase. So Ms. Quintana or Ms. Trigg, do either of you want to speak about what's upcoming with the school board student representatives?
Right here.
Got it.
In accordance with 22.1-86.1 of the Code of Virginia, which permits school boards to appoint student representative in a non-voting capacity, Board members will visit each high school within Roanoke City Public Schools to engage with the junior class students and encourage them to apply for the position of student representative to the school boards. The visits will occur at each high school on the following dates: William Fleming this Friday, the 27th at 9:15, and Patrick Henry again this Friday, the 27th at 1 p.m. This initiative aims to promote students' voice and civic engagement by providing an opportunity for juniors to learn about the role of the school board and apply for a position as a student representative. Ms. Trigg and I are in charge of our student representative. Would you like to add anything else, Ms. Trigg? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. As far as announcements and reminders, we've already mentioned March 10th is the next board meeting. It'll be right here. We have our spring joint city council school board meeting on March 16th. That's in city council chambers. And then our board workshop right immediately before spring break. It's been a few years since we've had a March workshop because of how spring break has fallen. You can see the rest of our schedule there. And can I announce it? I wore blue and yellow on purpose, so I guess the William Fleming girls won 67-32.
Yeah.
Play again.
Friday at 6 p.m. at the Allen.
Okay, great.
Oh,
Oh,
I-
at Glen Allen?
Ah,
3.5 hours.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Hey,
I don't even know where that.
good things happening at the
Oh.
cliff.
yes.
All right. So with all of that said, and congrats to the Lady Colonels, we have a closed meeting tonight. Mr. Cherry, you make the motion.
All right. I move that the board convene in a closed meeting pursuant to 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing specific officers, appointees, or employees of the board, including consideration of their assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salary, disciplining, or resignation, and pursuant to 2.2-3711A3 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing the acquisition or disposition of real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body.
Second.
Thank you. Let's go.
Any discussion? Ms. Tresky, please call the roll.
One last thing.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Link,
Yes.
Dr. Jamison,
Yes.
Ms. Quintana,
Yes.
Ms. Trigg,
Yes.
Mrs. Watkins.
Yes.
Mrs. Apo.
Yes. The board will now enter a closed session to discuss only items within the approved motion. No other board business or decisions will be conducted during this session. Thank you, everyone.